Chapter 31. In the car, Wendy could not stop looking at Jasper while driving. "Is there something on my face?" Jasper asked her while touching his face. Looking at his reflection in the rear-view mirror, he was no different from other men apart from the fact that he looked a bit more handsome. There was a dazed expression on Wendy's face. She registered his question not long after. "I'm just curious. You always treat the people around you with kindness and courtesy. However, you also act pretty cold to other people. Instead of asking Mr. Jones to send them away, you let them remain standing over there. That's a lot harsher than sending them away." She chuckled. "I didn't think too much into it. To me, they're simply meaningless passers-by in my life. If it wasn't for the fact that they spoke to you in a derogatory manner, I wouldn't have even bothered with them," Jasper said matter-of-factly. As a person who had lived 2 lifetimes, how could he not understand the importance of remaining humble? "As for John, I think he's a pretty nice person. Besides, he has way more connections than I do locally. There will come a time where we'll need each other's help. It's always better to have one more friend than one more enemy in the business sector. Take today's incident, for example. His appearance saved me from undergoing a lot of trouble. It would be impossible for me to just find someone and show them the balance in my bank account to tell them I'm rich, right? Although the feeling of doing so feels pretty great, I can only do it once or twice. Doing it often will make me seem retarded." Wendy kept smiling. She seemed to have thought of something. "By the way, are you free tomorrow?" she asked. "Are we going to meet your father?" "Sure." With a playful smile on his face, Jasper agreed at once. Wendy was startled. She stared at Jasper in shock while wondering if Jasper knew how to read minds. It seemed like he could always tell what was on her mind. That was right. After accompanying Jasper and watching him earn a monumental amount of $3.1 billion by trading crude oil futures, Wendy was determined to recommend him to her father. Her family's company was currently in a dire situation. Wendy desperately wanted Jasper to help her family resolve this problem. However, Wendy intended to tell Jasper about her true identity before that. "There's something else I must tell you," Wendy said in a careful tone. Jasper pretended to listen to her attentively. "Actually, my father is Dawson Schuler," Wendy said. After blurting it out, she stared at Jasper unmovingly. She was previously worried that Jasper would feel pressured after she revealed her identity. However, her worries eventually dissipated since Jasper was now wealthier than her father. Nonetheless, Wendy was still worried that Jasper would blame her for concealing her identity from him. "I guess correctly," Jasper smiled. There was not an ounce of distaste on his face. He continued to speak. "The way you dress and act sets you apart from those who come from an ordinary family background. Furthermore, we're both from the same town. The only wealthy man with the last name Schuler from our town is the head of Schuler Group. You don't blame me?" Wendy asked anxiously. "What should I blame you for? After all, I hid my identity from you," she said. "That's nothing much. It's not a big deal at all. You've always kept a low profile and never wanted to attract unnecessary attention or cause unnecessary incidents because of your identity. If this was in the past, I'd feel extremely pressured. After all, your father is the wealthiest man in the province, and you're his only daughter." Jasper chuckled softly. Wendy let go of some of her tension after listening to Jasper's words. She laughed lightly. "Are you pressured right now? I don't put someone else's finances into consideration when I'm making friends now. Anyway, they can't be richer than me now." After telling her a well-known joke from the future years, Jasper once again felt that it was truly great to be rich. Everything was way too good to be true. "Besides, your father is the wealthiest man in the province, and I'm one of the top 10 wealthiest billionaires in the country. He won't take me as someone who's going after you just because you're his daughter, right?" Chapter 32. "All right, let's head over tomorrow then. I've taken a day off." Wendy nodded. Given her father's current situation, it seemed that he would be the one reaching out for Jasper's help instead. However, she was extremely worried about her father's incident. That was why she wanted Jasper to meet him as soon as possible. "Sure," Jasper agreed at once. After reaching home, Jasper did not rest. He continued to recall his memories to further perfect the next steps he intended to carry out in his master plan. When he arrived at Jasper's place the next morning, the both of them then headed off to the province. Dawson decided on a time and venue for them to meet up under Wendy's arrangement. They were not meeting up at his house or his company. Instead, they were meeting up at a recreational facility, a golf course. Thompson Golf Course was one of the most popular gathering locations among the wealthy people from the province. There were not many forms of entertainment available in the year 2000. A man like Dawson Schumer could not be spending his leisure time in the disco, right? In comparison, golf was a relaxing, recreational, and premium activity that raised one's status. It naturally became one of the favorite sports of the local wealthy people. Jasper and Wendy entered the golf course together. A middle-aged man dressed in white smiled at the both of them from a distance away. It was a face that Jasper was extremely familiar with. He was the chairman of Schuler Group, Dawson Schuler. He was a businessman who had started off by selling fruits from a cart on the streets and came to own billions of assets at his peak. In the days of the 1990s, households that owned $10,000 were considered rich. During those days, Schuler Group was considered the province's main enterprise. Although Schuler Group was not as brilliant as it was back then at this moment, it still possessed a large number of funds. With more than $1 billion worth of assets, Dawson Schuler was the wealthiest man in the province. Of course, this was all before Jasper was reborn. "Father," when he called out happily. She threw herself into Dawson Schuler's arms like a bird returning home to its nest. "Ha, I finally get to see my darling daughter. How's everything? Is work going well?" Dawson asked, laughing out loud. "Everything's going well." Wendy grinned. She did not forget to include Jasper in the conversation. Returning back to his side, she said, "Father, this is the friend I told you about, Jasper Lane. Mr. Schuler, I've admired you for a long time," Jasper said sincerely. In his past life, Jasper could only admire someone like Dawson Schuler from afar. Even though he eventually committed suicide by jumping off a building, Jasper could not even begin to compare to him. Nevertheless, Jasper had unknowingly overtaken his place. Dawson smiled and reached out his hand to Jasper. "Winnie has told me a lot about you these days. Jasper Lane, right? Not bad at all. You're talented. Don't call me Mr. Schuler. Since you're Wendy's friend, you can address me as Uncle Schuler instead," he said. "I'll address you as Uncle Schuler then," Jasper said. "Do you know how to play golf?" Dawson asked Jasper. So far, he was having a pretty good first impression of this courteous man. Dawson asked Jasper casually. In his opinion, a young man like Jasper should be capable of playing billiards well. He would probably not know much about golf. Golf was a sport pursued by those from an upper social class. According to Wendy, Jasper was not from a wealthy family. He was born into a rather poor family. Wendy had the same thought as her father as well. Just as she was about to say something to prevent Jasper from feeling awkward, he spoke up. "I know a bit. My skills are really mediocre, though. Even so, I should be able to play a few rounds with you." Chapter 33. Dawson was rather shocked. He could tell that Jasper was confident in himself. He did not seem to be saying so just for the sake of showing him courtesy. "All right, go take a golf club. Let's go in and play one round." Wendy and Dawson did not know that Jasper had often accompanied his boss to play golf in his past life for business purposes. He did not dare say that he had world-class golfing skills, but he considered himself better than an amateur. Jasper walked over to get a golf club. Both of them then chatted happily while walking toward the golf course. With a caddy following behind them, Wendy could not join in their conversation. She could only listen to what they were talking about. She wanted Jasper to come over to help her father out. However, both of them had not talked about business after meeting. They were simply chatting about their personal insights on certain trivial matters. Wendy was overcome with dismay. The weather today was pretty good with white clouds floating in the brilliant blue sky. The air was also cleaner and fresher compared to the future years. On top of that, the golf course had an excellent environment. Jasper and Dawson were rather high-spirited while they chatted and strolled toward the course. As they made their way over to the tee, Dawson, acting his part as Jasper's senior, gestured for him to start off the round. Jasper did hesitate either. He grabbed the club he would be using to strike the ball and bent his knees slightly. Holding tightly onto the handle of the golf club, he turned around and struck the ball in one go. Dawson's eyes shone as he watched the white golf ball fly over the fairway and fall onto the green where the hole was located. What an accurate strike. You're a veteran, he said. Excuse my poor performance. After Jasper spoke, he walked toward the ball with Dawson. I heard from Wendy that you've done some investments. Why don't you find a stable job instead? It's risky to do business, Dawson said in a casual tone. Jasper's brows arched slightly. After going through all the formalities with him, Dawson was now beginning to probe into his details. This meant that he had obtained Dawson's initial approval. If their previous meeting and subsequent conversations had not satisfied him, he may not be facing such a situation. They would most likely just have a meal together and return to their homes respectively. It was not a must for Jasper to help Dawson Schuler and his company. He was only doing this because of Wendy. Furthermore, Dawson was Wendy's father. It was very important to gain his approval. Everything in life is risky. Some risks are meaningless, but some are largely beneficial. Although having a fixed job is good for stability, one will be restricted as well. I like to earn money with my wits. Jasper tapped his head. You're really confident. Dawson chuckled without commenting further. Father, Jasp is really good, Wendy said weakly. She regretted not telling her father about Jasper's extraordinary work performance just because she thought of giving him a surprise. If she had told him, he would not be treating Jasper with an attitude like that. Dawson was slightly dismayed at Wendy's behavior. His precious daughter, whom he had raised and cherished dearly for more than 20 years, was so quick to take someone else's side. Inspecting Jasper from the perspective of a father-in-law, Dawson was slightly dissatisfied with his confidence. The company was now in a critical situation. If things did not take a better turn, all he could do was ensure that the rest of Wendy's life was stable and prosperous. Since Dawson would be leaving his money to Wendy, her husband could be unskilled and untalented. However, he must be always reliable and treat Wendy well at all times. Uncle Schuler, I'm not playing this round, Jasper said. His words came as a shock to everyone. Dawson looked at the golf ball that had landed nearby. Why not? The ball is at most 3 shots from the hole. You have a good chance, he said. Jasper pointed at their surroundings. Although the distance is good, the surroundings aren't that great. There's a sandpit on the left and a water barrier on the right. This isn't a landscape that I'm familiar with, he replied. I'll have to pay a high price to save the ball, so I won't simply dabble into unfamiliar areas. Once I realize a problem, I'll choose to stop the loss immediately instead of forcefully keeping things going, he added. Wendy's heart lurched upon hearing what Jasper said. She never expected Jasper to say something that perfectly represented the current status of her family's company. Dawson squinted, the kind expression and smile on his face vanishing instantly. It was replaced by an overcast look of anger. Chapter 34. The person who tricked you even asked you to single out the property rights to the group's chain supermarket assets. He told you that it was to facilitate the group's listing review. According to the original plan, that huge cash flow would help you earn a fortune in the financial market. However, the investment failed, resulting in a huge deficit. The funds cannot be collected, so you have no choice but to owe the supplier their payment. Even if Schuler Group were to apply for a bank loan, it would not pass the bank's evaluation because the property rights of the group's most important supermarket chain assets have been removed from the group. If any news of the fund spreads out, the supplier will ask Schuler Group for payment once they know about it. Meanwhile, Schuler Group can't take out the money. Therefore, you can only announce your bankruptcy to liquidate the assets. Mr. Schuler, am I wrong? Jasper asked while staring straight into Dawson's eyes. The expression on Dawson's face darkened with every sentence Jasper said. Alas, Wendy was Dawson's daughter. From the expression on her father's face, she could tell that what Jasper said was true. Wendy's face was pale in shock. Father, is Jasp telling the truth? She asked in bewilderment. Dawson let out a long sigh and nodded. That's right, but how do you know about it? These are all confidential information that's kept within the company, he said. Of course, Jasper would not tell Dawson that after he committed suicide in the future, everything became known to the public. The person who set the trap used the listing of the company as bait to trick Dawson into investing his funds into someone within the financial circle. In history, he almost swallowed all of the core assets of Schuler Group, even managing to claim dozens of chain supermarkets all over the province. He was the largest winner. This is a trap, Jasper revealed. His goal is to acquire Schuler Group. Looking at it now, he's about to succeed, he added. The expression on Dawson's face was quite a sight. He had been through countless ups and downs in the business sector in the past few decades. He had managed to become the wealthiest man in the province. Dawson Schuler was not an idiot. He had considered all the risks before commencing his course of action. The situation at hand, he had prepared himself for it since the very start. However, to hear Jasper say that it was all a trap, Dawson could not admit to it. Once he admitted to it, that would mean that there was a problem with his personal abilities. Chapter 35. The business records he set for the past few decades had all become a joke. If news about this spread out, he would become the joke of the entire province. Furthermore, that person had a terrifying personal background. Although Schuler Group was large, they did not have to go to such lengths to trick him. All things considered, Dawson did not believe what Jasper was saying. What nonsense! Dawson shouted out in anger. Many things have happened in between. You're just an outsider. You don't know everything. How dare you conclude that it's all a scam? Do you mean to say that I'm a fool with decades-long experience that's proven to be useless since I got tricked so easily? If it was not for Wendy, who stood beside them with a shocked expression on her face, Jasper would have already turned around and left. The rise and fall of Schuler Group had nothing to do with him. Initially, Jasper intended to take advantage of this opportunity to buy a stake in Schuler Group. After all, Schuler Group had a mature supermarket supply chain system. After the year 2000, the population's income would grow rapidly, and this would lead to an uprise in the supermarket business. As long as one opened a store, they would be able to earn money even with their eyes closed. Furthermore, the supermarket industry had a cash flow advantage that was incomparable to any other industry. In his previous life, the man behind all of it succeeded in seizing the national market after taking over dozens of supermarkets from Schuler Group. When Jasper was reborn, he was already a hotshot with a market value of $80 billion. His company was also within the top 3 domestic supermarket brands. If he had the chance to buy a stake in Schuler Group right now, he may make an extremely large profit in the future. However, Jasper was not worried about losing out on opportunities to earn money. Therefore, Jasper was not really concerned about whether he could buy a stake in Schuler Group. "Father," when he voiced out right then, she looked at Dawson anxiously. "You've always told me not to be conceited when I achieve something and always remain humble. Learning isn't a competition," she said. "Why don't you understand this principle right now?" she added. "I know Jasp well. He's definitely not the type to speak carelessly or exaggerate things. He must have his reason for telling you all this. Why can't you just remain level-headed and think through it?" she asked. Looking at Wendy, Dawson huffed coldly and turned toward Jasper. "All right. In that case, I'll give you a chance to prove to me that this is a scam," he said. "If you're right, I'll apologize to you. Otherwise, leave Wendy," he added. "How hard can it be to get proof?" Jasper smiled confidently. "Firstly, the person who planned everything must have full authority over the group's financial investment department. Mr. Schuler, you would only need to check what projects he has invested all the funds into during this period of time. I'm certain that those projects are just empty shells. He's using them to gain ownership of the company's funds. Next, the company lost its rights to its core supermarket business. Therefore, the other party must have transferred all the funds out from the newly established company. You can find out just by giving it a quick check," Jasper said. Dawson pinned his gaze on Jasper. After he finished speaking, Dawson immediately called his close associates and asked them to look into it. Although Dawson did not say it out loud, he had begun to grow more and more suspicious. He then made another phone call. "Uncle Schuler, is there anything you need?" The passionate and confident voice of a young man rang out from the other end of the phone. "It's nothing, Zayden. I'm playing golf at Thompson Golf Court. Wendy is back as well." "Wendy is back? Wait for a while, Uncle Schuler. I'll be there soon," the man said excitedly. Putting down the phone, Dawson told Jasper, "I called him over. Both of you can interrogate him personally. Don't disappoint me." Chapter 36. Father, you still keep in touch with Zayden Hanks? Wendy asked her father after listening to the voice on the other end of the phone call. "One of my greatest wishes is to list the company publicly. The elders from Zayden Hank's family happen to hold some authority over this sector, Dawson replied. He's a cold-blooded jackal. Father, nothing good will come out of working with him, Wendy said angrily. Wendy, you must know that there are no eternal friends or enemies when it comes to business. Only benefits are eternal. We're collaborating for mutual benefits. However, if he has thoughts that he shouldn't have, I won't have mercy on him, Dawson said in a cold voice. Nevertheless, Jasper's words were yet to be verified. However, the possibility of something occurring was sufficient to shift the mentality of a formidable character in the business sector like Dawson Schuler. Looking at the unreadable expression on Dawson's face, Jasper realized that Dawson Schuler was definitely not an ordinary person to be able to found such a large foundation. Half an hour later, a casually dressed young man who gave off a noble air arrived at the golf course in high spirits. Dawson was not in the mood to play golf, though. The three of them planned to have a meal at the restaurant on the golf course. Zayden Hanks had arrived. His gaze flitted from Jasper and lingered on Wendy. Wendy, when did you come back? Why didn't you tell me? I would have fetched you over, Zayden said in a warm voice. His attitude was beyond passionate as well. From his external appearance to his etiquette, Zayden was flawless. Ordinary girls would not be able to resist a young, rich, handsome, charming, and well-mannered man like that. However, Wendy remained indifferent. She simply replied to him monotonously, I came back to visit my father. I have no intentions to trouble you. Zayden acted as if he could not tell the implication of rejection from her cold demeanor. He chuckled. How would it be a trouble? Given our relationship, there aren't any troubles between us. Zayden, please take a seat. Dawson pointed to the empty seat. Wendy sat in the middle while Jasper and Dawson were by her sides. Zayden chuckled. He made his way to Jasper's side and said humorously, My dude, since I'm here, get up and sit by the side. Once Zayden entered the room and realized that Jasper was seated beside Wendy, a flame of jealousy sparked off within him. The way he spoke left no room for Jasper to deny his request. He was giving Jasper an order. Jasper slowly took a bite of his scone and chewed a few times. He turned over to Wendy and told her, This scone is pretty delicious. You should have one too. He then placed a scone on Wendy's plate. Jasper did not even bother to look at Zayden. He simply ignored him. As someone who was brought up in a wealthy family, Zayden had never received such treatment. His face darkened, and he glared at Jasper. It seems like you aren't going to acknowledge me, yeah? He asked. You don't know what kind of person I am, right? Huh. Picking up a wet towel from the table, Jasper said coldly, Whoever you are is none of my business. Your acknowledgement isn't worth anything to me either. Chapter 37. Zayden smiled through his rage. All right, nobody in the entire province dares to talk to me like that, he said in a level tone. Zayden, Dawson said, young people shouldn't act so rashly. It's the same anywhere you sit. Come here, sit beside me, he added. Although Zayden was extremely displeased, he could only suppress his anger since Dawson had told him off. Anyway, it was more embarrassing for him to stand there. After taking his seat beside Dawson, Zayden raised his gaze and pinned it on Jasper. Given your arrogance, you must not be an ordinary person. How do you talk to me like that? Tell me, which family are you from? Zayden asked. The Lanes, Jasper replied curtly. The Lanes? Zayden pondered upon it. There were not any prestigious families called the Lanes in the province. No one in the province would dare to talk against him like that. Was he from overseas? Don't think about it anymore. My family isn't prestigious or wealthy. We're just an ordinary family, Jasper said nonchalantly. The expression on Zayden's face changed immediately. Are you making a fool of me? He asked angrily. How am I making a fool of you? Jasper questioned him. Zayden glared at Jasper and sneered. Don't be too arrogant. You be ****. It takes skills, not slick talking, to make it in this society. If you act so rashly, be careful of not even knowing how you fell to your doom in the end. He was seething in anger. Also, know your place and leave Wendy immediately. She's not someone meant for a lowly B** star like you. Why don't you take a look at yourself instead? You should go and ask around, then you'll know what kind of family the Hanks are in the province. You're just a mere ant in front of me, he added. That's enough. Wendy burst out suddenly. Zayden Hanks, there isn't any sort of relationship between us. Who I choose to befriend isn't any of your concern either. Wendy looked at Zayden, who had an overcast expression on his face. You tricked my father into investing in the financial sector. Where did all the money go? She questioned him at once. Zayden remained impassive, but waves were crashing against his heart. Wendy's reaction did not surprise him. However, Dawson was remaining silent without saying anything either. This made him feel all the more cautious. In a logical sense, his plan was flawless. It was impossible for anyone to find out about it. He was so close to succeeding. By then, Schuler Group would be his. Wendy Schuler would belong to him as well. However, Dawson's attitude was ambiguous right now. He simply watched Wendy, who was interrogating him, without saying anything. He was obviously waiting for Zayden to give him an explanation. Zayden immediately suppressed his thoughts and said, Wendy, you've misunderstood. What do you mean by trick? Uncle Schuler is the best businessman in the province. What makes you think that I have the ability to trick Uncle Schuler? Or do you think that it's easy for someone to trick your father since he's old now? Don't change the topic. Answer me. Where did the invested money go? Wendy said coldly, still staring straight at Zayden. The smile on Zayden's face gradually vanished. As you said, the money has been invested. Of course, it's being used to fund some projects, he said matter-of-factly. Those so-called projects are simply the paper companies you created. You simply handed in a project plan and transferred all the money to your paper companies, right? Jasper suddenly chimed in. Zayden was not a fool as well. He was capable of coming up with such an extensive scheme and had even succeeded in fooling Dawson. He came back to his senses at once. It was impossible for Dawson to be suspicious of him all of a sudden. Besides, Wendy was clueless about all the internal details. The only person who could have done so was the rash, arrogant young man sitting beside Wendy. Hey, are you the one spreading lies to everyone? Are you seeking death? Huh. All of a sudden, Zayden stood up and yelled at Jasper angrily while pointing at him. Chapter 38. Zayden was flushing red while Jasper remained unfazed as he ate his dumplings, completely ignoring him. Jasper is my friend. Wendy suddenly spoke, looking at Zayden impassively before Jasper could say anything. I'd prefer if you were more polite to him. Zayden felt the flames of fury within him burning extremely hot as he watched Wendy defend Jasper. With a scoff, Zayden spoke disrespectfully. Everything I'm doing is to help push the Schuler Group into the market. Instead of thanking me, you're here suspecting me? The financial investment department has always been under your management, and I have no doubt of your abilities. However, there are still things that must be done for the sake of formality when it comes to the board of directors. So, submit an investment report for the department tomorrow to the board for analysis. Dawson suddenly requested. Of course, but sir, is someone on the board questioning the work of the financial investment department? It's just for formality's sake. I'll be there. What can possibly happen? Dawson smiled as he reassured. Of course. Zayden agreed with a polite smile. All it takes is a word from you, sir, and I'm sure no one will dare to question further. If you'll excuse me, I'll be taking a trip to the washroom. With that, Zayden got up and went to the bathroom. The smile on Dawson's face disappeared the moment Zayden left. It really is a scam. Dawson's tone was laced with fury. Wendy's expression changed, and she immediately suggested, Then what are we waiting for? Let's just expose him once he gets back. No. It was Jasper who spoke. The father-daughter duo turned to look at him. Wendy's gaze was filled with confusion. Meanwhile, Dawson's gaze held admiration. Zayden has plotted a large scheme, not to mention that he has the Hanks family backing him. Otherwise, there's no way he would manage to hide this so well from you, Uncle Schuler. They've been planning this since a long time ago, so we got to have a backup plan as well if we're going to turn against each other. Jasper's mind was clear. We don't act unless we're absolutely certain of our victory. Dawson nodded satisfactorily and spoke. Jasper is right. They've been planning this for a long time. They'll only scatter and run if we suddenly turn against them. Then could he have possibly realized something from what I just said? Wendy asked nervously. Jasper smiled and replied, No, what you said was crucial, or he would have just continued with his plan. You've pushed him a little, and if he panics, There'll be cracks in his plan. Dawson broke into a loud laugh. What a friend you have here, Wendy. Quite the complex mind you have, young man. Jasper continued to eat his dumplings, but his eyes were bright. The fact that Dawson had managed to become the richest man in the province was evidence that the man was smart. Taking advantage of the issue that had arisen with the investment, it was adding fuel to the fire by requesting Zayden to submit an investment report tomorrow. It was a small piece of detail, yet it was all it took to feed Zayden's guilt. He had just arrived at that thought, but Dawson had already seen through it long ago and made his move. Experience was truly something to be wary of. It would be foolish for him to look down on anyone just because he had the advantage of having transmigrated. In the bathroom, Zayden pulled out his phone and called a number once he made sure that he was alone inside. It's me. We need to speed things up now. 3 days. We're almost done with moving the assets, but I think that B***starred Schuler might already be suspecting something. Chapter 39. Zayden's expression tethered between gloomy and sunny when he hung up the phone. He felt slightly frantic. Having plotted for over 2 years, success was right before his eyes. Yet if anything were to happen during such a crucial time, forget about not getting any benefits, but his family would also surely doubt his ability. Mother Kerr. It's got to be that B***starred. Jasper's appearance flashed through his mind, and Zayden punched his fist onto the wash basin. Then again, so what if you found out? My success is just a moment away, and Schuler Group will be mine in no time. And you, Wendy, all you need to do is be my woman, and I can perhaps let you live. Don't you dare try to die. After returning from the bathroom, Zayden was no longer in the mood to eat, so he made up an excuse to leave. Dawson did not ask him to stay and let him go as he wished. Dawson frowned as he watched Zayden drive away from the field. He's growing impatient. There's no doubt that he'll try and speed up the transferal of assets, but that's not something I can deal with. The money I've already taken out for investment. Sigh. Hearing Dawson, Jasper suddenly piped up, I can deal with that. Dawson looked at Jasper in shock. Dawson was stunned. That's quite the claim you have there. How are you going to rein back $600 million worth of investment funds? As long as it's to do with money, it's nothing much. Jasper smiled lightly. Jasp is really skilled when it comes to this, Dad. Wendy boasted. Don't joke around. Dawson shook his head. That's $600 million that he has scammed from me with a paper company. There's no way to get that money back. The company's cash flow is tight and about to break right now. Suppliers will surely begin to knock at our doors if news gets out. As far as Dawson was concerned, Jasper had already proven his claim that this was all a scam. Yet how is a youth like Jasper going to get the $600 million investment fund back? Throttle Zayden and threaten him to return the money? That's unrealistic. At that thought, Dawson felt despondent. I never expected to still be blinded at such an age, but I've already planned it out. Should we get to the point, I'll leave the both of you enough money to live the rest of your life in riches. At that, Dawson patted Jasper's shoulder. I like you, Jasper. I don't think I managed to be as outstanding when I was your age. I have nothing to worry about if you're the one beside Wendy. What are you talking about, Dad? Wendy was nervous and embarrassed. She was nervous due to Dawson's pessimism and embarrassed at how he had just given her off to Jasper. You're my child. How could I not understand what you're thinking? You've never taken an interest in any boy since you were a child, and here you are bringing him before me. How could I be blind to what you're thinking? Dawson's tone was grim. I'd take the time and slowly assess you if none of this was happening, but I can't afford to do that now. Uncle Schuler. Jasper could not help but speak as he watched Dawson's gaze turn more pessimistic. It's just $600 million. I can give it to you. Despite having seen his fair share of things in his life, Dawson was utterly shocked when he looked at Jasper. Just a second ago, he had thought that this young man was outstanding. Why was he bluffing like this right now? Jasp just earned $3 billion and $100 million from the stock market a few days ago, Dad. When he spoke gleefully, the look in her eyes prouder than when she earned money. 3. What? Dawson thought he had heard wrongly. $3 billion and $100 million. Wendy repeated herself. Looking at Jasper again, Dawson found that his understanding of the boy had been rewritten. He had worked his whole life, yet not even at his best did Schuler Group ever own that much in assets. Even so, This youth before his eyes, who was such a young man, had earned $3,100,000,000? Chapter 40. I must be growing old. Dawson could not help but sigh when he found out that Jasper had indeed earned such a large sum of money from the stock market. Jasper smiled and spoke. You shouldn't belittle yourself, Uncle Schuler. As a person who has lived through more than I have, you have much more experience than me. There's much for me to learn from you. Dawson could not help but feel ashamed in the face of Jasper's humility. Before his scam was exposed, Dawson had thought that people like Zayden were the epitome of outstanding. The thought of marrying his daughter to Zayden had indeed crossed his mind. Yet now that he thought about it, he wondered just what he had been thinking. He had completely disregarded how heinous Zayden's greed looked on him. Jasper's outstanding character had easily outshined everyone else he had met before. The young man had a net worth of a few $1 billion, yet he had not let money cloud his mind. Rather, Jasper had only gotten more humble and polite with each meeting. What was such a person if not the best of the best? I wasn't the nicest to you, Jasper, and for that, I apologize, Dawson spoke sincerely. You're too kind, Uncle Schuler. Jasper shook his head. I'm not the kind to stick my nose into others' businesses, but there's no way I can just stand by and watch when Zayden bears ill intent to you and Wendy. As he spoke, Jasper glanced deeply at Wendy, who was flushing and too embarrassed to look at him. Jasper smiled and spoke again. I know that Zayden took the money to invest in a specific stock. While I can easily take the $600 million out, there's also no way that I'll just let him walk free with so much money. What's yours is yours, and I'll make sure he'll give it back with not a cent less. What do you plan to do? Dawson's eyes sparkled as he asked. Ever since I got into the stock market, I've been buying and selling stocks by following whatever the trend was. I haven't stock sniped anyone yet. Have you heard of the dealer-takes-all idea, but in terms of the stock market, Uncle Schuler? Jasper smiled slightly as he spoke. I'd like to be the dealer today. You're audacious. I like that about you. Dawson praised. What do you need? I'll help you prepare what I can. Just a quiet office and a computer. Without another word, Dawson immediately had his driver fetch them to Schuler Group's building after Jasper made his request. As this was the corporate building of the richest man in the province. It was a 66-story, high landmark building in the capital of the province and a place of wealth that countless people yearned for. With Dawson there, Jasper made a beeline to the chairman's office on the highest floor. Sit here, Jasper. Dawson had Jasper sit on his main chair. I don't think this is very appropriate, Uncle Schuler. Jasper did not know whether he should laugh or cry. If I say it's fine, then it's fine. Just sit. With how Dawson was getting progressively satisfied with Jasper, he no longer cared about such semantics. Just then, the secretary came into the office with a tray of tea. Upon looking up, the secretary was met with the sight of an unfamiliar young man sitting on the chairman's seat, while the said chairman was talking to him with a face full of smiles. The secretary was dazed by the sight. Placing the tea down, the secretary then turned and left the room completely frozen. It was a surprise that the secretary made it through the door at all. By the side, Wendy's cheeks were flaming in embarrassment. Dad can't possibly be thinking about handing the company to Jasp. Can he? Good Lord! Is this my dowry? As her face flushed deeper with every thought, Jasper had already clicked open the stock market software by the time Wendy snapped back to reality. After deducting the $17,280,000 paid for the villa, Jasper's account amounted to a current total of $3,083,960,000. Despite knowing that his daughter would not lie to her, Dawson could not help but feel stricken when he saw the long line of numbers that would easily burst anyone's blood vessels in Jasper's bank balance. Chapter 41. Dawson's net worth had never exceeded $2 billion even when Schuler Group was at its best. Yet here Jasper was with $3 billion in cash. There was no comparing them. Jasper did not know of Dawson's current mixed feelings and directly typed in the code for a specific stock. Heavenly Dragon Real Estates. Zayden's plan had succeeded in the previous timeline, so when nosy people decided to look for leads afterward, they found that after Zayden had scammed the $600 million from Schuler Group, he took the money to buy stocks from Heavenly Dragon Real Estates. Heavenly Dragon Real Estates had a total market value of $4.9 billion. Moreover, The owner of Heavenly Dragon Real Estates was the Hanks family. The real estate company could be considered as one of the Hanks family's main assets. Under Zayden's hard work, Heavenly Dragon Real Estate stocks managed to triple in value, and the $600 million turned into $1.8 billion. Just like that, Zayden became a legend in the stock market business. However, there was no way Jasper would let his dream come true. Investing all $3 billion worth of funds into his own securities account, Jasper opened a position at the current price. City A had a large stock market, where not even the influx of funds could ripple the market capitalization that had amounted to trillions of dollars. However, with a current market price of only $4.9 billion, Heavenly Dragon Real Estate's value was immediately pulled to its daily limit once the $3 billion worth of funds rushed in. The sudden and unexpected shooting up of the candlestick chart had excited all potential investors. Even some bigger organizations were stunned. Heavenly Dragon Real Estates was currently unlisted, so it was evident that a strong investor had entered the market with how its stock price skyrocketed. Who was this investor? What was he trying to do? The domestic A-share market instantly surged. Funds were the most sensitive to changes, and Heavenly Dragon Real Estate's share price had immediately attracted attention from all parties. While everyone watched, Jasper began to liquidate his position. The daily limit reopened and was immediately followed by a terrifying drop as Jasper depressed the prices. The sudden drop ignited fear within investors and urged everyone to believe that it was a hidden dealer who was trying to offload stocks. As such, all of them decided to jump ship as well. No one wanted to be a fool. Therefore, as if it was on a roller coaster ride, Heavenly Dragon Real Estate stock prices first skyrocketed before finally plummeting into the void. Such fluctuation resulted in heavy losses for numerous people. Those who bore the brunt were those who had heavier positions. Yet, this was only the first step of Jasper's plan. Watching Heavenly Dragon Real Estate's stock price drop, Jasper reopened his position and began to slowly consume shares that investors were underselling. Minutes ticked by, and Heavenly Dragon Real Estate stock prices had yet to cease falling, for Jasper was using a large number of funds to undertake them. As long as the stock price was close to the down limit, he would take it all, until there was no more of it left. Now, all retailers and organizations understood what he was doing. Some divine being was trying to deal Heavenly Dragon stocks. The rise and fall of Heavenly Dragon stocks were at Jasper's fingertips. At that moment, Jasper seemed to have become the god that controlled Heavenly Dragon stocks. If he wanted their prices to rise, they would rise. If he wanted them to drop, then not even the gods could save them from dropping. Unless the opposing party could come up with enough funds to overpower Jasper's and dump him, it was game over for everyone else. However, Jasper stared at the $2 billion funds he still had in his account, and it was evident that no one could stop him. Sure, those organizations had a large number of funds in their hands, but why would they come and fight for Heavenly Dragon stock prices against him for no reason? They were not even related to Heavenly Dragon Real Estate. As such, there was no way. Doing so might even result in losses to them. At the same time, in one of the state's many luxurious mansions, Zayden received a phone call. The person on the other end sounded terrified and nervous. "Mr. Hanks, quick, look at Heavenly Dragon stocks. It's almost dropping to its lower limit. We've lost $200 million today." Chapter 42. What? We lost $200 million? Zayden was instantly infuriated. How do we lose $200 million out of the blue? The Hanks family was rich, and Zayden was hardly poor, but that did not mean money fell from the skies. Such a sudden turn of events had knocked the wind out of Zayden's chest like a hammer. He did not understand how his smooth sailing plan had suddenly taken such a sharp turn. The person on the other end continued to mutter, prompting Zayden to shout at them. "All right, enough. Shut up. Why are you so frantic? We'll be fine. Let me take a look first, and I'll update you." Hanging up the phone, Zayden quickly turned on his computer. Although he had mentally prepared himself for what he would see, the sight of skyrocketing K-line followed by the downward plummet of stock prices still stunned him. Zayden's expression darkened, and it was gloomy to the point that a storm seemed to be brewing between his brows. "Mother asterisk cur. Someone's obviously out to get me." Zayden opened the backstage and stared at the shocking 8-figure value on his profit and loss account. He clenched his teeth in infuriation. Is it Schuler Group? No way. Zayden immediately debunked that thought, for he had already cut off Schuler Group's cash flow. There was no way they would have the money to do such a thing. Not to mention that they could not have known how he had invested the $600 million into Heavenly Dragon real estate. Only a selected few from his family knew of this. Who could it be? One of my brothers who also want to inherit the company? With his thoughts going haywire, Zayden shook his head. He had no idea who the culprit was and whether it was a mere coincidence or if all of this was planned. But he had to counter it. Or this will be the end to the $600 million. At that thought, Zayden dialed a number. I've seen the market capitalization. Immediately transfer around $80 million in funds from my personal account over. I want the prices pulled back up. The prices are back up. Jasper suddenly spoke, bringing both Dawson and Wendy's gazes over to the computer. A large order of tens of millions of funds could be seen entering Heavenly Dragon stocks, which pulled the prices that were hovering over its limits up quite the notch. The rise in prices was steady. Looks like he's made his move. Jasper was not surprised to see such a quick reaction from Zayden, for there was surely a group of professionals working for him and monitoring the market. It would be underestimating him to think otherwise. Yet, so what? What do we do now, Jasp? Do we continue to beat the stocks down? Wendy asked. No. Jasper shook his head and smiled. He's fighting us for bargaining chips now. There are only so many of Heavenly Dragon stocks, and most of them belong to retailers. If he wants to control the prices of the stocks, he'll have to ensure that he has enough of them on hand. I bought quite a bit of them when I played around with the limits, but they aren't enough. If he wants to pull the prices back up, then we'll pull them up with him. At that, Jasper then transferred $20 million in funds, and the prices began to increase. Followed by Jasper's investment, Heavenly Dragon stock price began to rise as well. These tens of millions of funds had thus driven the market prices to skyrocket again. This time, investors who were still pondering no longer hesitated. Even a fool could tell that two dealers were trying to fight for decision rights with Heavenly Dragon stocks. Chapter 43. The stocks retail investors owned acted as reminders. If they end up pissing the dealer off and the dealer decided to hammer the market again, it would be over for everyone. Therefore, all the retailers decided to undersell the stocks they had, leaving some larger organizations to observe the scene. They still had no idea who this investing party that had just come in and entered a fund of over tens of millions of dollars was. As such, organizations decided to be more careful as to not act impulsively. The other parties raising the prices as well, Mr. Hanks. That's weird, I thought they'd continue dumping stocks. The other person's words from on the other end of the call made Zayden frown. It looks like they're targeting me, then. Zayden clenched his jaw. They're accumulating stocks. The $80 million will be used up in no time if this keeps going on, Mr. Hanks. We got to come up with a plan. Motherf asterisk Kerr. Zayden suppressed the urge to bring parents into his swears. In addition to the $600 million, he had put in another $80 million from his own pocket. He would be in big trouble if he lost the money. Sweeping his eyes at the bottom right of the monitor where the clock was, Zayden clenched his jaw. I'll transfer another $14 million. Whatever you do, I need you to hold out for another 27 minutes until the market closes. Then, we'll deal with this tomorrow morning when the market opens again. With that, Zayden hung up the phone and withdrew $14 million at the last minute, transferring the funds to the securities account. Zayden felt his heart cry as he watched Heavenly Dragon's stock price increase nonstop. He could only pray that this mysterious person did not have a large sum of funds and would back off at the current situation. While Zayden pulled his money, Jasper had just gotten off the phone with John. It's done. Extraordinary situations require extraordinary solutions. Your personal account's back, Uncle Schuler, but you'll need to sign up again at a securities company nearby, Jasper said with a smile. Great. Dawson had no qualms at all. In the stock market, any institution or retail investor holding more than 5% of a company's outstanding shares must hold a placard. We don't have that kind of time, so we can only open 2 of your smaller sub-accounts to do this. Jasper glanced at his account that was moments away from needing to hold a placard as he spoke. He transferred the funds to both Dawson and Wendy's accounts while his own continued to accumulate funds. The matter of funds did not worry Jasper at all. For the entirety of Heavenly Dragon stocks only amounted to 4.9 billion on the market. He had 3 billion, and that was enough for him to buy 70% of its stocks if he wished. Zayden was screwed. He had nothing to fight Jasper with. That was why when Jasper watched Zayden clench his jaw and continue to invest, he decided to put in another $50 million to corner Zayden. "Mr. Hanks, our defenses are down. We don't have any more money." Zayden glared at the market lines with a grim look on his face. His hand tightened harshly around his phone, moments away from smashing it. "Mother of asterisk king hell? First, you dragged the stocks to their limits with the 400 million. Then you dumped the stocks and accumulated at least 200 million in funds. Now when I've entered 80 million, you follow. I entered 14 million, and you're still one-upping me with 50 million. Do you have asterisk king print the money out or what? Who the hell are you? Why do you have to target me?" Like an enraged lion, Zayden paced around the room. His eyes glanced at the stock market, and he sat back on the chair with an ashen expression. It was just in time for the market to close for the day, and all stocks had stopped their exchange. In the end, the price of Heavenly Dragon stocks had stopped at a 9.99% increase, and it had not met the daily limit. Zayden understood that this was what the other party intended, to continue accumulating shares. He did not care about the money. What he wanted were bargaining chips and stocks. Once this person manages to accumulate enough shares, Heavenly Dragon real estate will be over if they try to crash the market. Fear struck through Zayden's eyes as the man shot up. His hair was standing on end, and his goosebumps were raised. No, that can never happen. His scalp aching in fear, Zayden did not hesitate before leaving the house and speeding to Hank's residence. He had to see his father, for only his family could help him at such a time. Chapter 44. Running red lights as he sped to Hank's residence. Zayden had yet to catch his breath when he was summoned by Silva, his father, and the head of the Hanks family, to the study. "I just received notice this afternoon that there were unusual fluctuations with Heavenly Dragon stocks. Someone is trying to control the market price. I believe you've already fought them?" Silva stated as he looked at Zayden impassively. As Zayden's father, no one knew better than Silva of his son's actions. Embezzling Schuler Group, for example. Without Silva's permission, there was no way Zayden would have the guts or the resources to do so. As well as when Zayden did not hand over the 600 million he had taken from Schuler Group and invested it in a Heavenly Dragon instead. It was something Silva had allowed. Yet evidently, the current turn of events had exceeded the expectations of the father-son duo. Taking a big gulp from the cup a servant had brought in, Zayden then relayed the entire situation to his father with an embarrassed look on his face. Silva remained quiet as he listened and did not comment on anything at all. "Which is to say, your plan has been exposed." Silva's tone was void of emotions. Zayden knew that this was a premonition to his father's fury and quickly replied, "The plan's been smooth sailing this entire time, Dad. Everyone around me is too loyal to betray me. I can't think of how that be asterisk starred Schuler could have gotten wind of it. You were set for failure the moment you saw Dawson as a fool who would be easily trampled on." Silva chided. "Dawson and I are from the same generation. If he could have gotten to where he is today, even under your grandfather's control, then what makes you think you can hold power over him when the Hanks family has failed to? Did you think that your plan was flawless? Do you have any idea how many times I've had to clean up after you?" Zayden's expression grew despondent as Silva continued to berate him. "Dad, the biggest issue now is that we have no idea who this person sniping Heavenly Dragon real estates is. Maybe Dawson found someone to lean on, but we still have to make a move no matter what. No **T. Silva scoffed, speaking in a grim tone. "Heavenly Dragon real estate is one of our family's main assets. You have no idea how many of your uncles and cousins are dying to get their hands on it. With the **T you've gotten into today, I've already received 4 to 5 calls from them. The Hanks family may be strong, but these uncles of yours are hardly easily placated. Any mishandling of this will result in a grave loss to the family. Screw this up, and you can forget about succeeding my place in the family." Zayden banged his fist on the office desk and growled, "I don't care who this person is, but I'll make sure I won't let them get what they want. I can tell you for sure that they're here for the sole purpose to crash the market. This person has enough funds, which means that they came prepared or perhaps have been plotting against us from a long time ago. That'll explain why money isn't his objective. What he wants is to crush Heavenly Dragon real estate. Give me some funds, Dad. This person has accumulated enough shares today, so I'm sure he'll crash the market right off the bat tomorrow morning when it opens. We can't just stand by and watch it happen. What if all he wants is to make a fortune? Won't you just be walking into their trap with my money? Silva asked. Zayden shook his head and replied with certainty, no way. Heavenly Dragon has been low profile this entire time. There's nothing to profit off of it. From what happened today, this person's still accumulating shares even as the stocks are at a 9.99% increase. They'll control the stocks at the lowest possible price if they're doing this for the money. There's no other explanation but to crash the market. Silva fell silent for a moment before he asked, so how much money do you need? 1 billion. Zayden's words were shocking. We'll have to take from the family's assets if you want to withdraw that much money. Are you aware of the consequences? Silva's expression was solemn. Zayden clenched his jaw. If we succeed, our family will suffer no losses. We can take advantage of the 600 million I invested in the beginning for profit, coupled with my own money that I put in. It'll accumulate to a total of $1.7 billion of capital. It'll be enough to crush them, and I'll have at least $2 billion to spare when we're done. I won't lose. We can't delay the situation with Schuler anymore. I've decided to push the plan forward and immediately publicize Schuler Group's broken cash flow. There's no doubt that Schuler Group will be over. If the person in the stock market is the one Schuler is leaning on, then they'll be attacked by both sides. They can't possibly take care of both ends at the same time, so they'll lose. Seeing the confidence in Zayden, Silva fell deep in thought for a moment before he made a decision. All right, I'll support your decision. The money will arrive in your account by the time the market opens again tomorrow. Don't forget that this is a battle you cannot lose. Win, and no one will be able to steal the spot as heir from you. But lose, and my place will be affected by your actions as we. Zayden gave a wretched smile and replied, Don't worry, Dad. There's no way I'll lose. Schuler Group will be ours, and I want Wendy too. A lustful look flashed through Zayden's eyes as he began to salivate at the thought of Wendy's ethereal features and alluring figure. While Zayden returned to Hank's residence, Jasper turned the computer off back at Schuler Group. How'd it go? Dawson asked Jasper straightforwardly as he did not understand stocks too much. Not too bad. Zayden reacted quickly and has enough funds, so he was able to pull at least 100 million more at the last minute. But most of my shares were bought when the prices were close to the down limit, and almost all of them seem to have increased to the daily limit now. As such, I ended up earning more than 10 million today. Jasper was in a good mood. It was not a daily occurrence where the enemy provided you ammo. You've earned more than 10 million in just a few hours? Dawson was astonished. His company was in the supermarket industry. It was a legendary cash cow that guaranteed profits every year. Still, excluding expenses, Schuler Group earned a net profit of no more than $1 million every day. To earn such an amount was already considered impressive at such a time, but it seemed so inferior in comparison to the over 10 million Jasper had earned in a few hours of doing absolutely nothing. That was the reason why Dawson was so impatient to introduce his company to the stock market. Sure, Dawson did not understand the market, but he knew that legally the fastest way to increase his capital would be through stocks. I told you, didn't I, Dad? Jasper's really good at this. Wendy began to boast again, as if she would never grow tired of doing such a thing. So what happens tomorrow? Dawson asked. Zayden doesn't have a choice. All he can do now is withdraw and pool money so that he has more available cash than me. However, there's no way he's winning in terms of liquid cash. Jasper chuckled lightly and spoke. He'll definitely do everything he can to accumulate as many stocks as he can tomorrow, which is why I'm going to close my position and drive his cash flow into a drought. Chapter 45. You're not going to hammer the market again? Wendy asked, astonished. If even you assume that I'll hammer the market, then there's no doubt that Zayden will think so too. He has to save Heavenly Dragon real estate, while all I want is to crush him. Not to mention that I'm not interested in playing in such a small pool with him. Heavenly Dragon real estate is hardly any high-quality stock. It'll only be a matter of time before inflated stock prices would plummet. He has no shot at saving this market. Dawson agreed with Jasper's words. Despite not understanding how the stock market worked, doing business was built on the same idea. When a company only had so much to provide, it did not matter how people hyped it, for the company's market price would not exceed its performance by too much. After all, investors were not fools. All right then, that's it for today. We'll deal with it again tomorrow. Come back with us for today, Jasper. You can stay at our home. Dawson's words were shocking. Wendy made a small sound and began to shuffle on her seat. She glanced at Jasper, then back at Dawson. The more conservative part of Wendy told her that it would not be very ladylike of her to have Jasper stay over at their house. However, Wendy's heart did not reject the notion. In fact, her thoughts began to spiral in a fanciful direction. Isn't this cohabitation? Wendy's cheeks flushed greatly at the word that drifted through her head, and she turned her face away so that no one would see the ripple of emotions in her eyes. It would be my pleasure. Jasper gave a small smile as he took in Wendy's embarrassed, yet charmingly unrestrained appearance. Dawson laughed aloud and brought the two of them downstairs. After exiting Schuler Group headquarters and getting into Dawson's Maybach S600, Jasper stared at the sight of the province around him. In the year 2000, while it was still appointed the province, it had hardly begun to develop. Low-story housing could be seen everywhere, and the roads were still narrow. Sites of private constructions could be seen everywhere. Thinking back to how the province looked in his past life, Jasper suddenly spoke. If you're interested, Uncle Schuler, I think you could consider something in the real estate industry. This industry will inevitably be the pillar industry of the nation's economy in the future. You'll earn great revenue by dabbling in it while it's still early. Now that Jasper held a strong enough place in Dawson's heart, Dawson would genuinely consider the words he said. I've thought about it before, but while Schuler Group is quite a smooth cash flow, we're still wary when it comes to the real estate industry. It takes too many funds, and it's not liquid enough. Jasper was not surprised by Dawson's explanation. Think of it this way, Uncle Schuler. Sure, it may require a considerable amount of funds to build real estate, but you don't have to come up with every cent of the funds. With your connections, Uncle Schuler, I'm sure it won't be too difficult to fish out a few plots of land with good potential. You could mortgage the land and borrow money from the bank in return. Using the money you borrowed from the bank for construction, you'll only need to pay 35% of the whole cost. Let the contractor pay the rest of it in advance, and only pay them back after the construction is completed. In that case, Schuler Group will only need to come up with $20,000 at most for a project requiring $100 million in funds. What Jasper spoke of was a common trick that many real estate companies would employ in the future. It may not seem much to him, but it had opened a large door to Dawson when the latter heard it. That's very promising. Dawson was extremely sensitive when it came to sniffing out good businesses, and with Jasper's reminder, he realized that this was a viable option after a moment of thought. Would you be interested, Jasper? My connections with your funds, we can do this together, Dawson suddenly said. Jasper's eyes sparkled at the suggestion. While Schuler Group did have an issue with funding, it would no longer be an issue if Jasper were to help them meet the requirements. Once the matter of funds was resolved, it would no longer prove to be impossible for Schuler Group. Chapter 46. Dawson making such a suggestion was an evident act of reciprocation so that Jasper would be benefited as well. The most crucial part of the plan was connections, for it involved the bank, the contractors, and official dealings. These were all things that Jasper could not perform as he was still a rookie in the field. Dawson, however, was different. Perhaps Dawson was doing more than just returning the favor. Perhaps there was something deeper to it. Jasper glanced at Wendy, who sat next to him. She seemed secretly elated about something he had no idea about. Slowly, he found himself understanding what his future father-in-law's intention was. He was using his own connections to pave a path for Jasper. Sure, we can talk about this officially another day, Jasper replied. Dawson nodded in satisfaction. There was no need to explain himself too much when he was talking to someone smart, for they caught on pretty quickly. The car sped away, leaving the heart of the city and entering the outskirts. As the richest family in the province, the Schuler's residence was luxurious and spacious. Dawson had bought this piece of lush land and built a villa amidst the mountains and bodies of water. It occupied a large plot of land, and the front courtyard itself amounted to thousands of square feet. The first thing that met them when they walked in was a fountain and two wide paths for cars in the middle of the grass lawn. The paths stated clearly which was to drive in and which to drive out. Driving past the fountain was a villa built in a way that resembled a palace. Servants had already arrived and opened the door. Despite already readying himself for the sight, Jasper could not help but admire the depths of the richest man in the province's wealth as he stared at the villa that was so luxurious it was nauseous. Dawson had initially planned to eat dinner with them once they returned home, but he received a phone call that changed his plans. A lot of people in the group are asking about credited payments. I have an inkling that Zayden must have let the news out now that he's panicking. Not to mention that now I have an idea of the transfer of funds. I've got to deal with this in person. You guys should eat first at home. I'll be back later. Hearing Dawson, Jasper replied, "Do what you need to, Uncle Schuler. Just tell me if there's anything I can do to help." Dawson waved his hand dismissively. "It's not a big deal, I've got this." The name Dawson Schuler itself is a brand of its own in the province. "I'll definitely push this back down, don't worry." Then Dawson quickly left. Watching the car drive off, Wendy asked worriedly, "My dad will be fine, right? There's no way your dad will let this whole empire he created by himself end just like that. Relax, it's just one Zayden Hunt. He can't do much to your dad." Jasper comforted. Wendy then turned to look at Jasper and asked, "What about you? I've never seen you panic since I met you again. Is there nothing you can't resolve?" "There is." Wendy had not expected Jasper's reply. "What is it?" Wendy asked curiously. "You. The question of your happiness and future is a very important problem to me." Jasper stared at Wendy and smirked. Staring blankly at Jasper, Wendy's fair and dewy cheeks blushed red before Jasper's eyes. Wendy staggered backward in embarrassment. "You sweet talker." With that, the beauty fled. Her initial angelic and calm composure was long thrown out the window. Chapter 47. Watching Wendy's fleeing figure, Jasper's eyes were filled with mirth. The most fantastical period between a man and a woman was during this blurred and ambiguous time. Jasper had already regarded Wendy as his own to love, and Wendy showed no intention of rejecting. There was no way this relationship would meet the same fate as in his previous life. Over the moment it began, Wendy did not reappear before Jasper until dinner, but even then she still dared not look at him. It was precisely such shyness that was akin to a lotus fluttering in the cold breeze that made Wendy look particularly enchanting. As the two talked and laughed at the dinner table, a servant interrupted them with the arrival of a guest. The message had just been relayed when the door of the villa was pushed open, and a loud couple walked into the living room of the villa. "Are you back already, Wendy?" the well-dressed, heavily accessorized woman asked in surprise when she saw Wendy in the dining room. Wendy replied politely, "I just came back today. Uncle Zach, Aunt Luna, are you here for Dad?" Hearing this, Luna and Zach shared a look before Luna finally asked, "Is your dad at home, Wendy?" Wendy shook her head and responded, "Dad went out to do something, Aunt Luna." "How can I help you?" Luna chuckled and answered, "Nothing much. I just heard rumors that something came up with the group's funds. We were wondering how your dad is doing, so we came to visit and check up on him." Wendy's expression turned slightly cold when she spoke. "Don't worry, Uncle Zach, Aunt Luna. How could such a large group have a funding issue?" At that, Luna's expression shifted slightly, and she stated bluntly, "That's where you're wrong. It's never impossible for things to take an abrupt turn when it comes to doing business. You never know what could possibly happen, which brings us to the main reason we came today, to ask your dad to pay back what he owes us. It's nothing much, just around $1 million. It was originally supposed to be settled by the end of next month, but now our food factory isn't making too many profits and we can't take the risk." Wendy was infuriated at Luna's words. "It's not even that big of a deal outside, and as my uncle and aunt, as my dad's brother, not only are you not helping my dad, but you're also the first to come to ask for money?" Luna and Zach looked grim when they heard Wendy's words. Luna shouted, "Bullsh asterisk T. What do you know? You're just a child. How can you speak to your elders with such an attitude?" Wendy was pissed. "I'll treat you like an elder the moment you act like an elder. But with how you're behaving now, What kind of attitude do you expect to get from me? You disrespectful child. Luna was furious. Even your dad wouldn't talk to us like this. Who do you think you are? Since you're not going to treat us as your uncle and aunt, then I'll make it clear to you today that your family owes me money. That is a fact. Pay us now, or we'll start moving our products out of your supermarket overnight. Wendy turned pale with anger and spat out bitterly. You've always been in poor health, Uncle Zach, and the situation in your family used to be very difficult. When Dad founded the company, he had never once forgotten to help your family's situation. Your food factory would have gone bankrupt long ago had it not been for him. Not to mention that my dad was the one who sponsored the opening of your factory. He would tell you he lent you instead of giving you that money if you asked him, so that it wouldn't bruise your ego. You've earned your fair share of money from my family for so many years. But have you thought of the money from back then? Luna raised her finger at Wendy furiously and shouted, "What are you trying to say, you stupid lady? Your father has so much money, and your Uncle Zach is his brother. What's wrong with giving his brother a little money, huh? I knew that you looked down on your poorer relatives, you stupid girl. I knew it. Don't act so ostentatious. Your company is facing a problem. I could tell long ago. We've already given you leeway and time considering the fact that we waited until today to come and knock on your door. No matter how you look at it, isn't this all your own problems? You should be blessed to be fancied by Zayden from the Hanks family. Yet you just had to play hard to get and ignore him. Had it not been for you, Mr. Hanks would have solved this problem the company is facing for you long ago. So if you want to blame someone, blame yourself for acting all high and mighty." Wendy stared at Luna indifferently. "No wonder Zayden managed to find me no matter where I went. You were the one secretly informing him this entire time. You couldn't wait to see me marry Zayden, couldn't you?" Luna sneered. "What's wrong with Mr. Hanks? You think that because you and your dad are rich that makes you the best in the world. The Hanks family bears power that you cannot possibly compare. It's your honor to marry him. How could you be so stupid and blind to not even recognize a blessing when it's right in your face?" Disappointed, Wendy did not even bother to reply. "Forget it, there's no way I can talk to people like you." "Leave, my dad isn't home." "What about the money then?" Luna shrieked. "Don't you plan to pay back the money you owe? It's just over $1 million. Pay me now." Wendy was utterly irritated and was about to refute her when Jasper walked over. "It's all right. She's not worth your anger," Jasper comforted. Jasper turned to look at Luna. "If I heard you correctly, the payment is due next month, correct? That makes it unreasonable as well as illegal for you to come and ask for money now. Please leave." Luna looked at Jasper doubtfully and sneered. "Where the hell did you come from? Who are you to act so arrogantly in my face? This is a matter between me and the Schuler family. What does it have to do with you?" Jasper replied calmly, "Wendy's issues are my issues as well." "Ah." Luna laughed. "Your issue? Sure, then hand over money on her behalf. I'll leave once I get the money." Luna glanced at the two of them while she spoke and sneered. "This rascal is the reason you rejected Zayden, Wendy. Just look at the shabby clothes he wears. What makes you think he's worthy of you?" With that, Luna turned to Zach, who was silent, and sneered. "Won't you try and control your niece? She's only so young, and she's already so shameless, simply taking any Tom, Dick, and Harry home. Who knows just how much more shameless things she has done in private?" Zach frowned and turned to Wendy. "Don't be fooled by people outside, Wendy. There's a lot of men outside with nothing better to do who hit solely on daughters of wealthy families like you. They think they'll get to live their lives in luxury without working hard for it. Exactly. Choose a capable man, not one so shabby-looking like him. You're just bringing shame to the Schuler family." Luna sneered. "If you want to talk about bringing shame, then it's the two of you who are bringing shame to the Schuler family." At the sound of the exclamation, the villa's doors opened, revealing Dawson. Despite being exhausted, the man walked into the room with a dark look in his eyes. Chapter 48. To Dawson. "You're back." Uneasiness bubbled in Luna and Zach's hearts at the sight of Dawson. After all, the couple was only so well off today, thanks to Dawson. "Why wouldn't I be back? You came here to look for me, didn't you?" Dawson spoke angrily. He understood if outsiders wanted to trouble him for their own personal gains now that there was a small issue with the group. Yet to think that it was his own family, Zach and Luna, who would be the first to come knocking on his door for money. There was no way Dawson would not be furious. Their actions had chilled his heart. Luna's expression shifted between gloomy and bright as she clenched her jaw. "We just want to sustain our family, Dawson. Can't you just pay the credit first?" Dawson threw a check at Luna's face, interrupting her. "Here, 1,130,000. Take it and leave." Luna picked up the check. With the money in hand, she found no need to suppress the things she wanted to say. She clenched her jaw in infuriation. "This is where you're wrong, Dawson. No matter how you want to see it, we're still your brother and sister-in-law. What's with that charitable expression on your face? We sell you products and you pay us back. It's just, have you no idea about the quality of your products?" Dawson roared. "When it comes to products of the same kind, yours are the ones with the most complaints. I would have thrown all of it out long ago had it not been for the fact that your family." Luna's expression shifted. She glared at Dawson and his daughter resentfully. "We've had enough of you looking down on us just because you have money. Schuler Group is going bankrupt anyway. I'd like to see what you're going to do when your luck runs out. The fact that you came knocking on my door for money the moment something went wrong with the group's funds means that you knew about the news long before I did. You're dying to see Schuler Group go bankrupt, aren't you? Just how many benefits did the Hanks family promise you?" Dawson pinned his gaze on Luna as he questioned darkly. Luna's expression changed as she shrieked. "I don't know what you're talking about." "You don't know?" Dawson scoffed. "Do I look like an idiot to you? You were the one who spread the news to the suppliers. So tell me what exactly the Hanks family promised you? Why are you so ready to work for them? Stop talking crap when you have no evidence." "Being rich doesn't give you the right to slander me," Luna argued. She did not dare to meet Dawson's gaze as she pulled Zach away. Dawson watched the two figures leave and did not block their way. Now that Luna and Zach had left, when he asked, "Did they really go inside with the Hanks family, Dad?" "I wasn't sure before, but it seems like it now," Dawson replied, disappointed. "But he's your younger brother." Wendy was furious, disregarding the fact that they've benefited greatly from us all these years. How could they help a stranger the moment something happens at home? Such is human nature. Shaking his head, Dawson turned to Jasper. "I've made a fool out of myself, Jasper." Jasper shook his head and asked, "How did it go with the suppliers? Is everything okay?" Dawson replied confidently, "There's still some weight to my name, so I managed to hold it off for the time being. But I'll still need to make up for the lost funds, or I won't be able to drag this on any longer." Jasper smiled. "Victory will be determined tomorrow." Dawson chatted with Jasper for a while before he went upstairs and wrapped up the day. Partially so that he could give Jasper and Wendy some space. Partially also because Dawson had been under a lot of stress lately and was exhausted. After Dawson left, Wendy piped up with a concerned look. "Dad doesn't like looking weak in front of other people, so he doesn't normally tell me about the kind of stress he's under. I know that he doesn't have it easy." Chapter 49. That's how fatherly love works. Weighted and grand. Jasper comforted Wendy, saying, "Everything will get better after this. It's the final fight tomorrow, isn't it?" Wendy stared at Jasper with a burning gaze. Jasper nodded. "Tomorrow determines whether we win or lose, whether life or death awaits us. We'll win though, won't we?" Wendy asked seriously. Jasper smiled. "Yeah." Wendy was greatly relieved by that reply and beamed. "Come on, I'll bring you to your room." The following morning after breakfast, Dawson cleared his schedule for the day and sat next to Wendy behind Jasper. Their transfer of assets got buffered since we managed to find out about it early, so the most crucial thing now is this battle of stocks. If we lose here, then it's over for Schuler Group. But if we manage to win, then it's smooth sailing from here onward. Dawson patted Jasper's shoulder and reassured him, "No matter what happens, don't give yourself too much pressure." Seeing that there were still 10 more minutes before the market opened, Jasper nodded. His gaze was tranquil. At the same time in a mansion, Zayden was talking to 3 stock traders in front of him. The man seemed slightly nervous as he spoke. Wake up, wake up. The market's about to open soon. I've already transferred the funds into the account. All you need to do is work the stocks according to my orders." He had just received $1 billion, which was transferred from his family's account half an hour ago. With this $1 billion, Zayden had full confidence that he would be able to crush and defeat that party in the market. Once the 10 minutes were up, the market came to life. The day began. Jasper squinted slightly as he watched the stock prices for Heavenly Dragon Real Estate begin to rise the moment the market opened. But he did not move to do anything. Like a cheetah hidden in the depths of the jungle, he waited for the best opportunity for action. Meanwhile, Zayden ordered his stock traders frantically. Buy it. Buy every single stock there is for this price. Under the clickety-clack of fingers on keyboards, the stock price showed a smooth upward trend. However, it seemed like the person who fought him yesterday for stocks did not appear. Where are they? Where did they go? Zayden frowned before he suddenly sneered. Afraid now, are you? That person has made a move, Mr. Hanks. A stock trader suddenly spoke, and Zayden immediately turned to look at the trading interface. Indeed, a large sum of money had been entered, and the speedily increasing price suddenly skyrocketed. Investors were stunned at the sudden jump. Countless investors began to buy, causing a surge in the investment funds entering. Everyone was afraid to let go of such a good chance to earn money. Step it up. I want every single stock there is. Zayden's expression was a wretched one. You want to compare how much money we have? Sure. I have $1 billion. It's enough to bury you alive. The stock price continued to rise, and the number of funds Jasper and Zayden had invested was immense. It was a battle where blood was spilled without the use of firepower. Both Jasper and Zayden seemed to have lost their minds. Just as the stock price was about to reach the limit, Jasper was certain that Zayden had already gone mad. Chuckling lightly, Jasper sat in the villa's office as he sold every stock he had bought over the last 2 days. This is the moment we've been waiting for. The corner of Jasper's lips curled upward. Chapter 50. The bait has been bitten. Now it's time to rein in the net. Zayden's in for a big loss this time. Jasper stated indifferently as he stared at the screen. By his side, Wendy stared at Jasper's side profile besottedly. It was said that a man looked the best when he was buried in work. At that moment, in Wendy's eyes, Jasper was glowing. In just 2 days, the stocks in Jasper's own account, as well as both of Dawson and Wendy's sub accounts, had arrived at a frightening amount. Coupling that with how he had cornered Zayden yesterday and pulled the stock price to its limit again just now. As of that moment, Jasper's trap had been set. All he had left to do was give Zayden the illusion that he was here to fight to the death, that he wanted all of Heavenly Dragon Real Estate stocks. If that was the case, then he would become the dealer of Heavenly Dragon Real Estate stocks, and Zayden would lose all decisive authority. That was why Zayden could not give up. It turned out just as Jasper expected. Zayden had given his all just to get his hands on circulating stocks before Jasper could. Just as everything got brutal, Jasper revealed his wretched fangs now that his setup was complete. Hidden in the jungle, the cheetah had finally gotten the chance to kill his opponent. There was no room for slip-ups. He had caught Zayden completely by surprise when he sold his stocks. It was as if 2 chess players were trying to outplan the other, only for one of them to suddenly stand up and forfeit the game. Zayden's mind went blank as he watched Heavenly Dragon Real Estate stocks make a dive. It was an actual dive that collapsed the platform and bombed the entire battlefield. Zayden assumed that Jasper would fight to the death with him, so he had never expected the latter to suddenly pack his things and leave. The opponent is selling. Our funds have all been absorbed to buy the stocks, Mr. Hanks. We don't have enough funds, Mr. Hanks. We're screwed. The stock traders' voices rang out incessantly as they urged Zayden. His chest was engulfed with darkness while his throat had gone dry and raspy. Zayden stared blankly at the backstage of the stock market. This was the end of the $600 million coupled with the money he had invested yesterday, as well as the $1 billion he had just put in today. Just like that, $1.7 billion had turned from liquid cash flow into fixed assets. Jasper had just cashed in the highest list price in one go. Staring at the few $1,000s of funds he had left, Zayden's complexion paled. He finally understood. Jasper had never intended to deal Heavenly Dragon Real Estate stocks. His only goal had been to scam Zayden so that he would fall into the other's trap. While Zayden had indeed taken the bait, not only did he invest every dollar he had, but he had transferred $1 billion of the family's funds as well. Now the $1 billion had turned into Heavenly Dragon real estate stocks of its worth, unmovable and fixed. We've won? Jasper chuckled and exhaled, his posture calm and collected. This battle of funds had come and gone quickly. In less than 2 hours, a gruesome battle involving a couple of $1 billion had come to an end. The most terrifying of all was how investors were not petrified after Jasper sold off all his stocks. While the investor and the dealer battled, the retail investors were one simple mistake away from losing everything they had. When they saw that the stock price was beginning to fall, everyone began to sell their stocks as if their life depended on it. Chapter 51. While Jasper had taken all of Zayden's funds, without Jasper watching over the market, Heavenly Dragon real estate stocks crashed. It was a downward plummet. Forget about the retail investors, but even organizations were stunned. No one knew what Heavenly Dragon real estate had done to offend such an investor that they crashed its market. How much did you earn? When he leaned over, some unruly flyaways caressed the tip of Jasper's nose, and they brought along the delicate fragrance of a lady. Winnie did not think that far, for she was only interested in looking at Jasper's backstage. Deducting the administrative costs, it's a total of $4,578,888,542.85. I started with $3 billion in funds and ended up with around $4,570,000,000 in my account. It's safe to say that I've wrung Zayden dry. Jasper sent $600 million to Dawson's account before transferring the rest of the money back into his own. Counting his earnings this round, he had earned almost $900 million after excluding the $600 million that belonged to Dawson. Good Lord! While this was not the first time she watched Jasper make money, Wendy still could not believe that he had managed to earn $900 million so easily over 2 days. While earning at such a speed may seem alluring, there's not too many chances to do something like this. There are too many factors required. Time, people, and opportunity. Jasper smiled. But it's still very cool. Wendy blinked and turned to boast to Dawson. Look, Dad, Jasper got all the money they scammed from you back. Dawson did not know if he should laugh or cry. Yes, I can see it. Your boyfriend's the best. Stunned, Wendy's cheeks flushed as she refuted. What are you talking about? We're just friends. Dawson laughed out loud and decided to stop teasing his embarrassed daughter. He turned to Jasper instead. You've got a great future ahead of you. With how you're able to make money like this, I'm sure you won't even need to start a business at all. You'll make a great living through stocks. Jasper shook his head. No matter how prosperous the stock market may be, it still relies on the operation of the actual economy. Sure, you may be able to turn into a nouveau riche overnight, but many will go bankrupt in return. Risks and benefits do not exist without the other, and no one is said to win forever. You're right. Dawson grew more and more satisfied with Jasper when he saw how the young man remained humble and diligent despite his success. It was not a trait or a mindset any ordinary person would have. Since you've already dealt with this, leave it to me to wrap up the rest of it then. The Hanks family has lost a large amount of money today. There's no way I'll let go of the chance to take advantage of this victory and get my revenge. Dawson spoke in a dignified manner. As the richest man in the province, Dawson was never the kind of man who would forget and move on when he had been taken advantage of. Now that the most important issue about the group's funds had been resolved, it was time for him to take revenge. At that moment, Zayden was sitting alone in the room with a pale face. He had shooed the 3 stock traders out. Boneless and weak, Zayden went over the happenings over the past 2 days and confirmed that this was indeed a trap his opponent had set up for him. Foolish as he was, he ran headfirst into it. Burning with humiliation, Zayden grabbed the keyboard by his hand and threw it at the computer before he let out a ferocious roar. Just then his phone rang. Seeing that it was from his father, Silva, Zayden's hand trembled as he picked up the phone. I lost, Dad. Zayden's voice was shaking as well. The other end of the phone fell silent before the man piped up in a cold tone. The family's furious, and someone has to take responsibility for what happened here. I'll try my best to keep your position as a family member so that you won't be thrown out. I understand, Zayden replied, his head dropping. Do you know who the other person is? Silva asked. Zayden smiled bitterly. I don't. That person took more than $1 billion from you, as well as your right as the heir, and you're telling me that you don't even know who it is. Silva roared. Chapter 52. Silva's roar added to the layer of sweat over Zayden's forehead. Someone with this kind of ability definitely has to be some big shot, Dad. I'll find him, Zayden frantically replied. Silva scoffed. The family has lost $1 billion because of this. Even without you mentioning it, there's no way the family will forgive this person. Stay low for the time being. Don't linger around the province either. Go take a vacation. Dawson is hardly an easy opponent. The family will have to prepare to deal with his revenge. Do you understand what I'm trying to tell you? Zayden refused to believe what Silva was implying. He can't possibly think of attacking me. How do you think Dawson managed to make a name for himself among so many outstanding people and got a good hold on the title of the richest man in the province for so long? Let me tell you, everything you know about Dawson Schuler is only what that man wants you to know. Not wasting more saliva, Silva hung up on Zayden. Zayden's expression had turned sinister and fierce. Had his plan succeeded, it would only be a matter of when before the entire Schuler Group was his. Yet right now, forget Schuler Group, but he had even lost $1 billion of the family's funds as well as his right as the heir. F***CK, Zayden roared, smashing and breaking everything in the house like a madman. I don't care who you are, but you're F***ked the moment I find out who you are. You be **starred. At Schuler Villa, Dawson received a few phone calls and went to make the appropriate preparations. I'll deal with the rest. Thank you, Jasper. I don't know what I'd do if not for you. Dawson sighed appreciatively. Jasper smiled. You're too kind, Uncle Schuler. Your issues are my issues as well. Dawson smiled and patted Jasper's shoulder. There'll be a fight between me and the Hanks family to come, but once this incident ends, you and I can sit down and talk about that real estate project. I'm very intrigued. Jasper nodded. The real estate industry will become highly profitable in the future. It would be unwise for us to let such an opportunity go. The sooner the better, too. Just inform me once you've got a plan, Uncle Schuler. Dawson hummed in approval and glanced at Wendy with a smile. I'll put Wendy in your care for a short while then. Please watch over her. It's part of my job. Jasper did not back down. Flushing red, Wendy secretly kicked Jasper. The man was too casual and courageous by saying such a thing in front of her father. What do you mean as part of your job? Are you implying that I'm yours? Wendy felt more embarrassed the more she thought about it, and she could not help but kick Jasper lightly again. About to engage in another battle with the Hanks family, Dawson quickly went to the company after a quick conversation with Jasper and Wendy. He was a busy man. Jasper had relaxed a bit now that he had gotten rid of the biggest threat in Wendy's life. Do we go back now? Wendy blinked and asked. We've just earned quite a bit of money, so what better thing to do first than a shop? To the Bentley showroom, Jasper said with a smile. Jasper had exclusively loved Bentley since his past life, but all he could do then was look at images and fantasize about driving one. Now that he was rich enough to buy his dream car without losing a large percentage of his money, there was no reason for him not to. The point of earning money was to spend it on things that sparked joy. In the year 2000, where the average income hardly amounted to $10,000, a car that could easily cost a person millions of dollars was a luxury regular salaryman could not even imagine having. Chapter 53. That explained why, despite them being in the province, the Bentley showroom was nearly empty. Jasper and Wendy's arrival had caught the attention of a few salesmen, but they decided to leave them alone when they realized that the two were mere youths. After all, a mere Chevrolet was hardly something any ordinary person could afford, let alone a Bentley that cost more than millions of dollars. Not that Jasper minded, for he saw the Bentley Mulsanne he had been yearning for a long time the moment he walked through the door. One of the greater things about brands like Bentley and Rolls-Royce was their classical designs. That was why the Bentley now did not look too different from the Bentley of 20 years later. From the timelessly classical cylindrical headlights to the powerful air intake grille, to the double-winged Bentley logo that represented honor and wealth. It was an iconic brand design that was unforgettable to any man. Are you too interested in buying this Mulsanne, sir? I can tell you more about it. A timid voice sounded from the side. Jasper turned his head and realized that it was a girl in a sales uniform. She looked young and held a mop in her hands as she cleaned the place. Glancing at the older salesman chatting in a circle not too far away, Jasper immediately understood that this girl was newly employed and discriminated against. "Yeah, I came to take a look," Jasper replied. While the two conversed, a saleswoman suddenly piped up in a mocking tone not too far away. "You can't expect to look for good business opportunities with eyes as blind as yours, Xena. The man looks just as old as you. How could he possibly afford a Bentley?" Xena flushed and mustered up her strength to speak. "He's still a customer. Regardless of whether he buys from us or not, I should still do my part. King idiot." Another saleswoman scoffed and chided disrespectfully. "A country girl will always be a country girl. She'll never compare to us city folk. She doesn't have the brains." The woman's words brought out laughter from a few other saleswomen. Xena gripped the mop tighter at the mocking laughter targeted at her. Feeling inferior, she stared at the ground and did not dare to fight back. "I think you're doing just fine," Jasper spoke calmly. "You don't have to pay so much attention to what other people think of you." Xena looked up at Jasper and gave a forced smile. "Can I try how it feels?" Jasper asked politely. Xena nodded vigorously. "Yes, you can." Just as Jasper was about to open the door and take a seat inside, the saleswoman who had been staring at them the whole time suddenly yelled, "Hey, hold up!" Jasper turned his head to see the saleswoman approaching. He was about to speak, but she was a step quicker. "What do you think you're touching? Do you have any idea how expensive this car is? Don't touch it if you're not going to buy it. You won't be able to pay for repairs if you break it. You too, Xena. Stop letting any poor person who pops out of the blue touch the car. Who's going to take responsibility if something happens? Do you still want her job?" But the purpose of a showroom is that Xena flushed as she tried to argue. However, she was interrupted by the annoyed saleswoman. "What do you know? You're just a country girl. If I say that you can't let him touch it, then it means you can't let him touch it." With that, the saleswoman pushed Jasper's hand away with a disdainful and disgusted expression before taking a towel to wipe the car door handle that Jasper had just touched. It was almost as if Jasper's touch had made it dirty. "Isn't the point of a showroom so that people can try and see how the car feels?" Jasper questioned coldly. The saleswoman snorted. "It is for people to try and see how it feels, just not for poor folks like you. I have to chase people like you out a few times each month. You people just can't seem to get on with your lives when you see an expensive car. You think that because you've touched it then you're some big shot now. I've seen more than enough. You disgust me." Chapter 54. Next to them, Wendy frowned at the saleswoman's attitude and choice of words. "Isn't your service a bit too unwelcoming? How can you even work in sales with such an attitude?" "Oh!" The saleswoman side-eyed Wendy and scoffed. "Do you not know where you are? This is the Bentley showroom. Every car in here costs a few $1,000,000. I've got to admit that you have quite the taste, making a beeline for the Mulsanne the moment you walked in. You can't even afford this no matter how you look at it. So why do we have to be polite to you? How do you know that we can't pay for it?" Wendy was irked. The saleswoman guffawed as if she had been told a great joke. "I'll swallow this towel if you can afford this. How's that?" Then, the saleswoman waved her hand to shoo them away irritably. "Enough is enough. You've already seen it, so stop standing here like an eyesore. Seriously, how do you even have the dignity to come in here with how poor you look?" Once she was done speaking, Jasper then handed Xena his bank card. "Write the contract and swipe the card. I'll pay in full." Jasper pointed at the Bentley Mulsanne. "I'll take this Mulsanne." With that, Jasper then looked at the gaping saleswoman and spoke coldly. "Swallow the towel." His tone was hardly heavy and his voice was not too loud, but it left a thundering shock in the saleswoman's ears. With a frozen expression, the saleswoman stared at the bank card in Xena's hand. She snapped back to reality and scoffed coldly, unfazed. "You think you can joke around with a simple bank card? This car costs $6.8 million. We don't provide discounts. How could you have so much money in your card? You just don't know when to quit." Jasper did not want to waste his time with her. "Write up the contract, please." Jasper turned to Xena. "Huh." Xena finally reacted and stared blankly at Jasper. "Wait, you're really buying it?" "I'm really buying it." Jasper flashed her an encouraging smile. Xena immediately ran off with the bank card in hand. Soon later, Xena walked over with a printed contract and the proper documents for the procedure. Under everyone's gazes, Jasper keyed in the password and paid $6.8 million with his bank card. Everyone let out a breath of astonishment. While there were people rich enough to buy Bentleys in the year 2000, there were powerful big shots who rarely appeared. It was unlikely for these people to buy the car in person, for they usually had someone else do it for them. Therefore, since its opening, this was the first car the showroom had sold. Commissions could be earned from selling cars, and with this transaction, Xena had earned at least $20,000. $20,000 in the year 2000 amounted to the annual income of an average citizen. Members of the sales department turned to look at Xena enviously. Meanwhile, she was overjoyed and thanking God for his blessings. The only pale-faced person in the room was the saleswoman who had mocked them earlier. "So, what are you waiting for? Swallow the towel." Jasper spoke coldly as he signed the contract. The saleswoman's complexion was sickeningly pale, and while she was bitter, she understood that she could not afford to offend someone who had the power to buy a Bentley. At that moment, she wanted to die. I'm sorry, sir," the saleswoman wailed. "Did you forget what you promised?" Jasper questioned coldly. Chapter 55. Since Jasper was not customizing his car with additional accessories, he was soon done with the procedure and could directly drive the car home. The automobile industry in the year 2000 was not as disgusting as it would be in the future, for bundled insurance had yet to be a thing. Once Jasper got the keys, he was allowed to drive to the DMV for his license plate right away. Jasper took the car keys from Xena and got into the car as the saleswoman trembled to stuff the towel into her mouth. Flicking on the headlights, he drove the car off its spot and left the showroom. The entire time, Jasper did not seem to check if that saleswoman had really swallowed the towel or not. Dashing across the roads in his almost $7 million car, Jasper was utterly exhilarated. While a car this luxurious was not well known among ordinary people in this time and age, its aura was non-dismissible. Any discerning person could tell at a glance that it was an expensive car. Jasper did not care about the gazes from the surrounding people, but he was overjoyed by the delight he felt from sitting in his dream car. "Wow, this car really is different. It's so much better than my BMW," Wendy exclaimed in surprise while sitting in the passenger seat. "Do you like it? I can buy you one if you want." Jasper smiled. The price was but a speck of dust to him, not to mention that the purpose of making money was to spend it. However, Wendy shook her head. "No thanks. I think a car like this is more suited to be driven by you, man. I quite like my small BMW. It's convenient and easy to drive. Plus, I want to make my own money. I like your determination. Quit your job and come with me if you want to earn money," Jasper suggested. "Sure," Wendy immediately replied. "It surely must not have been easy to get a job with Commercial Bank, though. Are you sure you want to give it up just like that?" It was Jasper's time to be shocked. "I'm only there to hone my skills, but from what I see now, I learn more by your side than at work. But you'll have to pay my salary if you want me to work for you, though." Wendy joked. "That's fair." Jasper chuckled. "You'll work as my secretary for now, but I'll give you a more adequate position once I get my own company working and running." "You want to start a company?" Wendy asked, stunned. Jasper nodded. "There's not much I can do if I'm just a one-man entity. I've been thinking about this for a while, so we're going to go look for someone now. He'll play a crucial helping role." Wendy was speechless. Jasper alone had managed to earn $4 billion in a short time. If he thought of this amount as not much, then she had no idea what would satisfy him. As he had said, Jasper did not return to the city. Instead, he took a detour and drove into the heart of the country's economy, Andros. While Andros was hardly as flourishing as the province, there were already signs of it being the center of Alexandria's economy. After driving for 4 to 5 hours, Jasper and Wendy arrived at a modern-looking building in the heart of the city of Andros, Warsoft Alexandria Technical Support Center. This was the destination of Jasper's journey. The person he was looking for was the current general manager of this technical support center. He was Jack Tanner. In the future, he was a senior executive who took over the position as Warsoft's domestic president and then resigned from Warsoft to work for Sacred as their professional manager. Trained by Charles Granger himself to take over Warsoft, Jack had begun working in its core management as someone of Oriental descent. Upon leaving Warsoft, Jack then pushed Sacred into the strongest market in the world and helped Quaid Chandler become the richest man in the country. Jasper thought that such a man would be the perfect choice to assist him in starting his empire. Not to mention that he should be at his lowest at this moment in time. Wendy thought that she had heard wrongly when Jasper told her what kind of person he was looking for. Are you sure he'll leave worse off to start a business with you, Jasp? Wendy could not help but ask. Definitely, because I know what he wants and I can give it to him, Jasper chuckled and said as he stared at the modern-looking building before him. Chapter 56. Hearing Jasper's words, Wendy asked curiously, what does he want? What a manager whose highest ambition is to realize his ideals needs is a stage where he can display his true talents. Jasper smiled. Coincidentally, that's exactly what I'm offering. Wendy did not understand completely, but it seemed like something great. Instead of bringing Wendy to Jack's office, Jasper went to a coffee shop with her in tow instead. Having read Jack's autobiography thoroughly, Jasper knew that this coffee shop was the place Jack loved the most while he worked in Andrus. It was a place he was sure to drop by after work every day. A cappuccino and a Jamaican Blue Mountain, please. After ordering, both Jasper and Wendy went to sit by the window. Wendy wanted to ask why Jasper did not go to the man's office, but since Jasper was not saying anything, she suppressed the urge to ask. Wendy was now aware of how Jasper did things, including the fact of how he would always plan first before he acted. Every time he acted, it was always with a 100% success rate. 10 minutes later, the doors to the coffee shop were pushed open and an unattractive man in a suit walked in. The usual Mr. Tanner? The server seemed very familiar with him and smiled as he asked. Yeah, Jack replied and walked over to the table he always sat at. However, he was shocked when he realized that a young couple was already sitting there. Jack did not comment on the fact that they had stolen his seat and gave Jasper a polite smile before he searched for an empty table instead. Just as Jack turned to look for a seat, Jasper spoke. This is the table you've habitually sat at for the past few years, Mr. Chandler. My apologies for occupying it today. How would you like to sit and chat? Jack looked at Jasper in shock, but it was not because he was curious how the other knew about him. After all, he appeared in domestic finance magazines all the time. Jack had an inkling that this young man had come for him. Do I know you? Jack asked. No, but you do now. Hi, I'm Jasper Lane. Jasper stood up and reached out his hand with a smile. Jack smiled and shook Jasper's hand, taking the invitation to sit. First stunned by Wendy's beauty, Jack then turned to look at Jasper. How can I help you, Mr. Lane? Jasper took a sip of coffee and smiled. You're the only employee in history to be awarded Wearsoft's Granger Excellence Prize twice consecutively, Mr. Tanner. Wearsoft's management team seemed to be very happy with you, including Mr. Granger, the richest man in the world. But you don't seem very happy working at Wearsoft. Are you, Mr. Tanner? Jack could not help but chuckle. I'm very happy with my job, and I don't have any intention to resign and work for someone else. I'd appreciate it if you headhunters don't look for me again. Jack had taken Jasper for a headhunter. Jasper smiled and went straight to the point. I'm not a headhunter, but I did come here today to invite you to join my company, Mr. Tanner. Jack did not know whether to laugh or smile as he looked at Jasper. He stood up, saying, My apologies, Mr. Lane. I have places to be. Let's continue this another time. Jack felt like he was wasting his time by entertaining this audacious man who came up to him and asked him to work for him. You know, Mr. Tanner, any modernized company takes the integrity of their employees very seriously. The consequences would be horrifying should the news of a fraudulent employee come to the surface. You've been living in fear too, haven't you, Mr. Tanner? Chapter 57. Jasper spoke casually as he played with the coffee cup in his hands. Jack's leaving frame was frozen in place as he turned to glare furiously at Jasper, spitting out the words, I don't think I understand what you mean. Jasper looked up at Jack and smiled. Your PhD in computer science at the Furnia State University of Technology is fake. Jasper's tone was not that of a question, rather a statement that carried absolute certainty. In his past life, it would only be a few years before Jack's falsified qualifications would come to light. It caused him great trouble, which then became one of the reasons why he left Wearsoft. Jack's expression shifted at the statement, and the man was mortified. What do you want? I'm not trying to threaten you, Mr. Tanner, but I'm very sure that you spend every moment worrying about your falsified certificate of education. A lie will always be a lie, and it'll only be a matter of time before people find out. Jasper looked at Jack calmly. Instead of being constantly worried over something like that, wouldn't it be better to accept the invitation of a company that admires you and is willing to accept this blemish of yours? Jack scoffed. My annual salary is $4 million. Can you even afford me? I could pay you $8 million. Jasper stood up to meet Jack's gaze. You're worth that price. Jack squinted and stared at Jasper warily. The young man in front of him was too young. He could not find it in himself to believe that Jasper could pay such a high price. Which company are you from? Jack asked. I haven't found a company yet. But as long as you agree, I'll gain the approval needed for my company as quickly as I can. You'll be my first employee, Jasper replied. Jack widened his eyes as he looked at Jasper, only to scoff irritably after a short pause. I can't believe I actually wasted so much time here with you, Mr. Tanner. Jasper's voice sounded from behind Jack, who had already turned to leave. My time is worth more than yours, so I hope you'll actually consider my proposal. What you've just rejected is more than a mere invitation to work for me. It's a brighter and better future for you and a chance to open a new era of business in the country. Jack's footsteps came to a stop. The two men found themselves at an impasse. Jasper took a small sip of his coffee. It's a little bitter. Meanwhile, Wendy was too nervous that she was struggling to catch her breath by the side. Over the course of their short conversation, she had managed to find details about Jack Tanner. It was then that she found out what kind of person this ordinary-looking man before her was. Jack was part of the country's first generation of professional managers, and he was a person of talent that Warsoft valued highly. His managerial skills had arrived at the highest level of mastery. Yet such a person was forced to take the passive role during his entire negotiation with Jasper, not able to go on the offense at all. When he looked at Jack before turning to Jasper, there had been a few times when she wanted to speak, but she suppressed the urge to do so. She was afraid that she would knock Jasper off his tempo. However, she was worried that Jack would be enraged and turn to leave. After a while, Jack finally turned around and approached Jasper with a dark tone. I want to see what you can do. How do I know that you haven't been joking with me this entire time? Jasper turned on his phone and showed Jack the balance in his bank account. $4,578 million. Jack stared at the earth-shattering number on the small screen of Jasper's phone, and his breathing grew heavy. Jack had never seen so much money his entire life. Chapter 58. Over $4 billion. It was a figure that would raise blood pressures and burst arteries. Jack felt his scalp go numb at the sight. While his current boss was Charles Granger, the richest man in the world, and $4 billion was only a fraction of his wealth, it was only because Charles was his boss. As a professional manager, Jack's annual salary was already considered to be one of the country's top paid occupations. Still, Jack's mouth dried at the sight of such a terrifying figure. If you still have any doubts, Mr. Tanner, you can come with me to Commercial Bank to verify it, Jasper spoke plainly. Jack smiled in embarrassment and could hear the jab in Jasper's words. That's all right. I'm sure you have no reason to joke about something like this, Mr. Lane. Indeed. Both our time is too precious for that. Jasper gestured back at the seat Jack had sat on before. Understanding what he meant, Jack sat back down. Jack recollected his emotions and spoke. If I may ask, Mr. Lane, is all your capital yours or your family's? Or is it a joint venture? Jasper smiled. Are you updated with the futures market, Mr. Tanner? Jack nodded. I haven't dabbled in it myself, but I do know that two mysterious retail investors have recently appeared in the futures market. One of them earned tens of millions worth of revenue, with just a few $100,000 as capital in the domestic bean futures market not too long ago, while the other took a step further with international crude oil futures, earning a whopping few billions. Wait, were both retail investor accounts yours? Jack was stunned by his own deduction as he stared at Jasper in disbelief. Precisely speaking, I didn't have even $1 to myself a month ago. I got myself an $800 million loan with my house's mortgage, and that $800 million has become this much. There was no hint of boasting in Jasper's tone. In fact, the man sounded like he was retelling a normal occurrence. Dazzled, Jack muttered to himself. People in the financial circle have been looking for the identity of these two mysterious retail investors this entire time. I never thought that it'd be you. It'll be thundering news should the public come to know that both accounts belong to the same young man. Now isn't the time to make it public. Jasper smiled and asked, "Well then, Mr. Tanner, is there anything else you'd like to know?" Jack asked, "I have no doubts about your abilities, Mr. Lane, but I'm curious about which industry you'd like to venture into." Ordinary employees tended to ask about wages and benefits, for a good boss was one who gave a high salary. Jack, however, was more concerned about the boss' ideals. He would not entertain the idea at all if their ideals did not align. Such a level of cooperation was essentially a mutual inspection between the boss and their professional manager, as opposed to the boss interviewing employees one-sidedly. In response to Jack's question, Jasper replied with utter certainty, "The internet." With memories of what would happen in 20 years, Jasper knew very well that the internet would be an industry that would create the most miracles in this era. Both Abelon Incorporated and Terry Zone Incorporated in the future were companies that dealt with the internet. Those were the true giants of the industry. Jack's eyes shone as he looked at Jasper intently. Let's not talk about the domestic market. Not even investment groups overseas are optimistic when it comes to the internet. They see the current trend of the internet as something fragile that would easily shatter. Are you confident, Mr. Lane? Jasper gave a small smile. It all goes down to the ability to profit when it comes to making an industry prosper. The only reason why internet companies around the world right now can't make money is that they haven't found a method to monetize website traffic. As a result, most of the upward trend in this market you see now is due to capital speculation. I wouldn't fault anyone for calling it fragile at all, since it will shatter. But I also firmly believe that the internet will affect our way of life as a whole within the next 20 years. Jasper pointed at Andrew's bustling nightlife outside the coffee shop and spoke in a tone so confident it was borderline maddening. Look, the country's filled with chances and gold right now. I'm going to create a world so prosperous, and then I'll stand right at the top of this world. Are you willing to miss out on this, Jack? Jack remained quiet for 2 minutes before he finally made his mind and reached a hand out to Jasper. I look forward to working with you. Jasper laughed and reached out to shake Jack's hand. You won't be disappointed. Now that they had decided on working together, Jack asked, "When do you plan to start the company, Mr. Lane?" "I have to submit my resignation with Worse Off first, and that'll take around a week." "A week's enough. Come to look for me in my city in a week." With the partnership established, Jasper left the coffee shop with the other two in tow. The three of them went to an Italian restaurant and got to know each other better while they ate. Jack and Jasper talked a lot during dinner, mostly exchanging business ideals with one another. Jack was surprised to find that despite Jasper's young age and the fact that he had spent his entire life within the country, he had a sharp mind when it came to business planning and looking out for trends. Not to mention that the young man's vision was extremely long-term, and many of their ideals coincided. Jack's expression was filled with excitement and anticipation by the time they parted ways. He could not wait to start at Jasper's company and work up a storm. Getting into the car, Wendy sighed in admiration. "Sometimes I just want to open up your brain and take a look at what goes on inside, Jasp. For a professional manager like Jack with his eyes set on the sky, I don't even think he'd agree if it was my dad who invited him, if I'm being honest. So, why would he listen to you?" Jasper smiled. How much he gets paid annually doesn't matter to people like Jack, because realizing his goals and ambition is what's more important to him. What he needs is a platform and an opportunity to do so. Then why would he resign from Worsoft? That's the company with the highest market price in the world. His boss is the richest man in the world, Wendy asked curiously. That's because Worsoft's too big. Jack knows that no matter how outstanding he is, it won't change the fact that he's still just an outsider. He won't get to make use of his best abilities with Worsoft, but he can with me. That's why he'll join us. Wendy nodded as if she understood and looked out the window to stare at Andrus' bustling nightlife, sighing. Andrus sure is flourishing. Our country is in for rapid development in the future. What you see now is just Andrus getting started. Skyscrapers will fill the land before you know it, and Andrus will become Alexandria's as well as the entire world's economic center. Jasper's tone was confident. By then, my name will be spread by countless people across the city, as well as the entire world. Stunned, Wendy stared blankly at Jasper for a moment. She must have thought of something, for she broke into a beautiful smile. Her beauty resembled hundreds of flowers blooming at the same time. The inside of the car was suddenly tinted in a warm and amorous color. I believe you. Chapter 59. I know you believe me, and I promise I'll make it come true. I want you to be there with me when it happens. Jasper chuckled, leaving one hand on the steering wheel while he reached out to take Wendy's hand with the other. Holding her hand, he placed it lightly over the gear. He had a beauty in the passenger seat of his luxurious car as he drove off. This was a scene almost every man had fantasized about. At that moment, Jasper was already on his way to success. The most important thing was that Wendy was the said beauty. Her fragile and delicate hand trembled in Jasper's broad palm from embarrassment, and the smoothness of her skin made him never want to let go. Wendy had not expected Jasper to make such a sudden move. Thank goodness it was dim inside the car. Her flushed cheeks could only be seen when the street lamps flashed from time to time. Wendy's heart raced as she felt her entire body freeze. The conservative part of her mind told her that she could not let Jasper touch her as he wished, and she should pull her hand back. Yet the voice in her heart rejected it. We're just holding hands. It's nothing much. After moments of hesitation and mixed feelings, Wendy sided with the voice that told her the latter. It was almost as if Jasper could feel the unease and shyness from the woman next to him. She was like a doe in shock. The corners of Jasper's lips curled upward, but the man remained silent. A man needed to know how to flirt, but he should know when and where to do it as well. At moments like these, remaining silent was better than anything he could possibly say. The Bentley sped quietly on the highway, and the man and woman in the car did not say a word. They opted to sit in comfortable silence instead. In the quiet of the night, a slight fragrance drifted within the car and pulled at their heartstrings. It was midnight by the time they arrived at the province, and Jasper sent Wendy home. I'll come and fetch you tomorrow. Then we can go and register the company at the Bureau of Industry and Commerce together, Jasper stated. Wendy's cheeks were still flushed, and she did not dare to look at Jasper. Making a rushed sound of acknowledgement, she ran into her house. With the keys to the Bentley hooked around his finger, Jasper left the district Wendy lived in with carefree steps. Wendy went to Commercial Bank to resign from her position the following day. With Jasper there, John had no qualms and sent the duo off himself once the resignation procedure was completed. Wendy's the beauty of our bank, Jasper. You have no idea how many hearts you're breaking by bringing her away. Treat her well, or as her family. We won't let you do as you wish. John was a smart man. There was no way he would recognize the hidden amorous air around Jasper and Wendy. Those were quite the words he had said. Fair enough. I wouldn't have the heart to make Wendy suffer. Jasper smiled before changing the subject. I want to register a company, John. I was wondering if you know anyone from the procedural aspect of the Bureau of Industry and Commerce? Could you help me cut the queue? I'm short on time. John patted his chest. Don't worry about it. Mr. Ziegler from the Bureau used to be my classmate. I'll go with you. With John in tow, Jasper and Wendy made a beeline for the Bureau Chief's office. Since John had already called in advance, Mr. Ziegler was exceptionally passionate and courteous when they met. Despite having already mentally prepared himself, Mr. Ziegler was still stricken when he saw the starting capital Jasper had applied for. $1 billion. Mr. Ziegler had seen his fair share of things to sit as bureau chief, yet he could not help but be stunned at the sight of a $1 billion starting capital in such a time and era. Chapter 60. How many enterprises were there in the country worth more than $1 billion? Ignoring those that were national, there were less than 100 private enterprises within the country that were worth more than $1 billion. This meant that the moment Jasper's company was registered, it would already be part of the top 100 enterprises in the country. Quite the man you are, Jasper. Mr. Ziegler sighed in admiration. Thank you for helping me out, Mr. Ziegler, or the whole registration process would have taken much longer. Jasper thanked politely. Mr. Ziegler waved his hand dismissively. Now that every local government began to openly ask for investment, wealthy businessmen like Jasper were considered VIPs no matter where they went. There was no reason for him to act high and mighty. You're too kind. I'm just doing my job. What do you want to name your company, though? Jasper glanced at Wendy, who had her lips pressed into a smile, and gave the name he had come up with long ago. JW Capital. Wendy was stunned. Then her face flushed red. The last thing she expected was for Jasper to name the company with a combination of their names. All right, JW Capital it is. Mr. Ziegler laughed aloud and waved his hand to have his employees put the relevant information into the system. Half an hour later, with all of the Bureau of Industry and Commerce's papers in his hands, Jasper bid Mr. Ziegler and John farewell. The guys from Royce Villa are meeting up for dinner at Sheridan, Jasper, and they want me to invite you. Won't you join us? John smiled and asked Jasper. Jasper nodded. Sure, I'll be there tonight. Seeing Jasper agree, John broke out into a laugh. All right then, see you tonight. Jasper waved goodbye. The two watched as Jasper and Wendy got into the Bentley and drove off. Mr. Ziegler turned to John and sighed in admiration. Just what divine being is Jasper, John? That's one hell of a capital. Don't think too much about it. He isn't from some big family at all. All of that is his own hard work. John chuckled. He could not help but feel proud at the expression of shock on Mr. Ziegler's face. I didn't believe it either in the beginning, but I think I understand now. Some people are just born smarter than others. It's not something we can compare to. Indeed. Mr. Ziegler nodded and lamented. Count me in for dinner tonight? Mr. Ziegler asked. John smiled. It'd be our honor to have the great Mr. Ziegler join us. Sitting in the car, Wendy held the file of documents in her hand. They may seem like just a few official papers and seals when in truth, they held the qualifications of a $1 billion company. Besides, the company was given a name that was a combination of hers and Jasper's. Feeling warm on the inside, Wendy turned to Jasper. I heard that you, President Jackson, and others have a dinner reservation at Sheridan? Jasper nodded. They're all connections. You can't do business without a few friends here and there. It's the same regardless of which industry you're working in. There are some people who you just have to entertain. Wendy explained, I didn't think to tell you this before, but do you remember Ivan? He used to be our classmate back in high school. He called me quite some time ago and said that there'd be a high school reunion at Sheridan tonight. I didn't want to go, but he persuaded a few female classmates who I used to be friends with and kept telling me to go. You'll be having dinner there too, right? How would you like to come and drop by with me? Wendy suggested. Why didn't anyone call me then? Jasper asked playfully. You know how people are, how they like to look down on others. As far as they're concerned, you're just a poor boy. I think Ivan managed to earn quite a bit on the stock market this year, so he called up some rather wealthy classmates to hang out together. That's why he didn't call you. Wendy was a little pissed. Has Ivan been trying to pursue you this whole time? Jasper asked. Wendy quickly rejected the notion. Impossible. We don't even keep in contact. Looks like I've got to go to the reunion then. Chapter 61. Your words make it easy for others to misunderstand our relationship, Wendy murmured. There won't be any misunderstandings. I mean what I say, and you know it too, Jasper said affirmatively. Hey, you're not even prepared yet. How can you just say that? What do I need to prepare? What I meant was that you should focus on your work by my side instead of thinking about relationships. As a boss, I don't want my secretary to be thinking of other men all the time. Go to hell. 5 o'clock in the evening, Sheridan Hotel. As one of the first clusters of Western hotel chains in the province, ordinary people could not afford to go to the Sheridan. A lot of people held a deep sense of curiosity and admiration toward this extravagant 5-star hotel. Jasper's Bentley gradually came to a stop in front of the hotel entrance. After getting out of the car and throwing the key to the bellboy, Jasper received a call from John. Mr. Lane, we're in the Orchid Chamber. Everyone is waiting for you. Jasper glanced at the time and grinned. I'm in room 407 downstairs. I'll come up after talking with a few people. 407? All right. We're waiting for you, John said with a chuckle. After hanging up on the call, Jasper and Wendy entered the hotel lobby together. Although the Sheridan was extremely luxurious for people in the current era, it was way too old-fashioned for someone who has seen the aesthetics 20 years into the future. I should get involved in the hotel industry next. None of the hotels of present are notable, Jasper said casually. Wendy was already used to Jasper's eccentric train of thoughts. Just as she was about to speak, a familiar woman appeared in front of them both. "Wendy Schuler," the woman remarked in surprise. Wendy smiled. "Are you Quinny Clint? I almost couldn't recognize you," she said. Quinny's face was amicable and rather pretty. However, her looks paled in comparison to Wendy. Despite this, Quinny had a refined demeanor. Jasper remembered her as well. She was a highly educated and well-mannered girl. Quinny had dressed up for today's reunion event. She had bought her dress not too long ago, and it was quite a good fit for her. "I thought that you wouldn't come." Overjoyed upon seeing Wendy, Quinny walked forward and continued speaking. "I had no choice. You guys kept calling me one by one. I had to come over no matter what. This is Jasper Lane. Do you still remember him?" Upon hearing Wendy's words, Quinny looked toward Jasper. She pondered it for quite some time before shaking her head. "It's been too long. I don't remember," she said awkwardly. Jasper did not mind as well. He laughed. 10 years have passed in the blink of an eye. "It's normal for you to not remember," he said. Quinny did not put much thought into what Jasper had said. "Did you know? There's a very skilled stock speculator in our class. Ivan Larson has earned $700,000 to $800,000 from the stock market this year alone. He paid for today's reunion event," she told Wendy happily. "He's in the room upstairs telling everyone about the basics of stocks. Let's go quickly. We may be able to get some tips and earn a sum of money," Quinny said. She then pulled Wendy upstairs with her. Looking at Jasper, who had a faint smile on his face, Wendy smiled exasperatedly. Which stock speculator could even compare to Jasper? Ivan was so full of himself after earning $700,000 to $800,000. He even held a reunion event to show off. He did not know how badly Jasper surpassed him in achievement. Upon arriving at the room upstairs, Jasper could hear the voice of an arrogant young man before even entering. "That's why I said that you guys are clueless. If you want to learn how to trade stocks, learn from me. I earned up to $800,000 in a year. You guys can't even earn that much in 10 years. If we weren't classmates, I wouldn't give you guys this chance. Do you what the people out there call me? They call me the king of stocks." Right then, Quinny pushed open the door. "Look who I brought over," she told Ivan, who was imparting advice by the table, excitedly. Ivan turned over. Upon catching sight of Wendy, his eyes gleamed. He took a few large strides over. Ivan, who was clad in a designer's suit, feigned an air of elegance as he spoke to Wendy. "Wendy, we've been waiting a long time for you." A slight frown formed on Wendy's face. "I'm here just to visit my old classmates. You don't have to wait for me," she said. Noticing that Wendy was still adamantly rejecting him, Ivan was rather displeased. It was fine if she did not like him in the past. Now that he was rich, how dare she continue to treat him with a lukewarm attitude? "Wendy, you didn't know, right? I earned up to $800,000 from the stock market. In a few months, it'd sum up to $1 million. I'm wealthy now," Ivan said matter-of-factly. Being known as a millionaire was indeed an attractive title at this point. He was confident that Wendy would look upon him highly. "Congratulations," Wendy said. Nevertheless, her response was still indifferent and underwhelming. Ivan frowned. He felt humiliated. Everyone had flattered him with smiles on their faces after learning about this. However, Wendy still seemed indifferent toward him. Ivan glanced at Jasper, who was standing beside Wendy in close proximity, and frowned. "Who are you?" "This is our reunion event. Unrelated people shouldn't be allowed to enter," he said. "He's Jasper Lane." Quinny thought of Jasper right then. "He's our classmate as well," she added on in a hurry. Ivan thought about it for a while. He then scoffed and pointed at Jasper. "You're that poor jerk that ate 2 meals a day? The one who only has measly oats for meals every day," he exclaimed. "Ivan Larson, he's our classmate. Be more polite." Wendy shouted out upon seeing him humiliate Jasper. The more Wendy stood up for Jasper, the more unhappy Ivan became. He sneered coldly. "Classmates or not, he must have come to beg me for tips after hearing that I earned a large sum from the stock market. Right? I've seen plenty of such people," he said. "You couldn't even compare to me during our schooling days, you poor jerk. The gap between us is even larger right now. If you know your place, don't get too close to Wendy. Don't even approach her. I can give you a few tips on the stock market if I'm in a good mood. You can earn enough to have some meat," he added. As Jasper set a stony gaze upon Ivan, who was being beyond arrogant, he raised an arm and wrapped it around Wendy. "What did you say?" Ivan's pleased expression turned rigid immediately. Jealousy and humiliation overcome him. He pinned Jasper with a dark gaze and gritted his teeth. "Get your dirty hands off her!" Chapter 62. Exactly, he must be trying to show off in front of Wendy. The King of Stock's record is as clear as daylight. He's nothing compared to him. I've decided to purchase stocks from Atlantis Tech when the market begins to trade tomorrow. What a joke. This B** starred ruined everyone's mood at this nice reunion event. Ivan, don't drag yourself down to his level. What is a country bumpkin like him capable of? You should share more about your experience in trading stocks. Jasper did not mind their intrusive, impolite discussion. They could go to hell for all he cared. If Quinny wasn't Wendy's good friend, he would not have bothered to give her a reminder either. The life and death of these people had nothing to do with him. Wendy could not stand how they were looking down on Jasper. She grabbed Jasper's hand and told him, "Jasp, let's go. Nothing good will come out of gathering with these people." From Wendy's perspective, these classmates of hers were a literal joke. They were amazing at fawning over those of a higher status and trampling over those of a lower social status. They didn't recognize the true god of stocks who was standing right before them and chose to suck up to Ivan instead. At that moment, Quinny was staring at her phone screen. "Oh my goodness, Atlantic Tech just released a notice. The board of directors have been reorganized, and there will be major changes to the company's management," Quinny said, attracting everyone's attention immediately. Ivan explained at once, "That's why I've chosen this stock. Once the board of directors get reorganized, the company's performance will rise as well. By then, the stock price will spike." Most of them did not know anything about stocks. They believed in whatever Ivan said due to his confident demeanor. However, someone said that Atlantis Tech has hidden the company's significant financial losses from the public. Also, they're suspected of faking their accounts. "Stockholders are being told to sell out their stocks at once," Quinny said. She then raised her head to look at Jasper in a daze. This notice had just been released. However, Jasper seemed to have known about it beforehand. Jasper did not expect the news about Atlantis Tech to break out so coincidentally as well. Ivan was instantly stupefied. He made his way forward and stared at Quinny's phone with a pointed gaze. His face gradually paled. "How is this possible? I put in all my savings into this stock. It must be fake news." Ivan shouted out in disbelief. The dealer must have released fake news deliberately just to get the stockholders to sell their stocks. The entire room fell into pin-drop silence. The only sound that could be heard was Ivan's heavy yet desperate breathing. Right then, someone knocked and pushed open the door of the room. John Jackson and Mr. Ziegler entered the room with a few prominent people from the city's financial sector. They all held glasses of wine in their hands and had come over to make a toast. "Mr. Lane, you said that you had some business down here. The few of us wanted to meet your friends as well. We're here to make a toast in honor of you," John said. This act alone was a sign of respect and honor to Jasper. Everyone burst out into an uproar upon hearing these words. "Oh my God! Isn't that the president of the commercial bank, John Jackson's? Isn't that the boss of Dason Companies? I accompanied our company's boss to have dinner with him last week. Mr. Ziegler? Mr. Ziegler from the Bureau of Industry and Commerce is here as well. All these renowned people are here to make a toast in honor of Jasper Lane?" Chapter 63. "All of you are being way too kind," Jasper said with a smile. He knew the good intention behind John's actions. John Jackson and the rest of them were all quick-witted and intelligent people. They could easily tell what was going on at just a glance. They could tell that the atmosphere in the room was not quite right. The other people in the room were not on the level to drink with them, whereas the atmosphere was slightly off. With that, John and the others clinked their glasses with Jasper and left the room. Jasper had no interest in staying there either. He followed John and the others to the orchid chamber upstairs. On the other hand, Wendy did not leave as she instantly got surrounded by a bunch of their classmates. "Wendy, those people were all here to look for Jasper Lane? They seem to treat him very courteously. What kind of person is Jasper now? How can he have a meal with those renowned people?" Annoyed by all the questions, Wendy spoke out directly. Weren't you all sucking up to Ivan Larson just now? Why do you guys care about Jasper? Does a poor jerk like him deserve your attention? It was common knowledge that women tended to hold grudges. Thus, it was impossible for Wendy to forget how they mistreated Jasper just now. All of them had awkward expressions on their faces. A few of them were embarrassed. Wendy, we're all classmates. Don't be like that, Quinny said while pulling at the hem of Wendy's shirt. Wendy's impression of Quinny was rather good. Furthermore, she did not do or say anything against Jasper from the very beginning. Letting out a sigh, Wendy waved a document folder at Ivan, whose face was ash pale. Do you know what's inside this folder? She asked. Wendy then pulled out the freshly obtained business license from the folder. More than a dozen of them raised their gaze and looked over. JW Capital Company, Ltd. Legal representative, Jasper Lane. Natural person shareholder, Jasper Lane, fully owned holding. Registered capital, $1 billion. Sharp intakes of breath instantly resonated in the room when all they caught sight of the keywords in those 3 lines of text. The number of zeros behind the number 1 on the business license dazzled their eyes. If it were not for $sign behind the number, they would hardly be able to tell what number it was. Forget $1 billion. Many people could not even catch a glimpse of such a business license throughout their entire lives. Everyone grew wide-eyed with disbelief. Ivan could not even utter a single word. It was as if he had been struck dumb. At this moment, when he felt that it was all meaningless, she could finally understand why Jasper was not interested in this reunion event since the very start. They were really not on the same level. How could they get along? Jasper was not arrogant like Ivan was. He did not care about what these people thought of him. This was because he did not have to care about his achievements anymore. So what if they thought highly of him? So what if they looked down on him? When these people were still discussing about daily necessities, Jasper already had a net worth of up to $1 billion. They lived in different worlds. There was no way for them to get along. Wait! Ivan shouted out as he stopped Wendy from leaving. Chapter 64. Wendy frowned and looked at Ivan. She asked stonily, "Is there anything else?" Ivan's expression changed. His arrogant and haughty demeanor from before was long gone. He was simply a sore loser right now. Since Jasper has so much money, can you put in a word for me? Help me out. We are all classmates. You can't watch me go down like this, right? He said with a pathetic stance. That's right. Since he's so rich, he should distribute some to us. Even if he earned that much money, he can't spend all of it. How can he bear to watch us suffer? Once Ivan spoke out, a few petty people began to join in as well. The lot of you are really hopeless, Wendy shouted. She was utterly shocked at how shameless these people were. Jasp has never wanted to show off. Classmates or not, he has never minded. Ask yourselves, during our schooling days, or even just now, who among you have ever treated him like a classmate? I was the one who forced him to come over today. However, I regret it badly. It's better for us to go on our separate ways in the future. Don't let your shamelessness break off the last strand of sentiment I have for all of you. After speaking, Wendy left without looking back at their awkward, embarrassed, and regretful faces. At that moment, Jasper was upstairs. He raised his glass and grinned. Everyone made a toast with me downstairs just now. My alcohol tolerance isn't that great, so I can't make a toast to each of you individually. So, I'll make a toast to all of you now. I hope you don't mind, he announced. With that, Jasper finished his glass of wine amongst their loud applause and cheers. John burst out into laughter. Mr. Lane, your news has spread everywhere within this sector. Everyone now knows that you've just registered a company. Don't forget us if there comes an opportunity to make a fortune, he told Jasper. Several bosses from the financial circle looked at Jasper intently. Their faces were full of interest. We must definitely work together if the chance arises. Money is meant to be earned together, Jasper chuckled. He's absolutely right. Let's make a toast to his words. John guffawed. Everyone would show support to someone who looked like they were on the path to glory. Nobody here would get on the wrong side of Jasper, who had just risen to power. Naturally, the host and the guests of the event were all happy and satisfied. After the meal, he received an entire pile of name cards. John, who was tipsy due to the alcohol, walked out of the hotel with Jasper. Brother, that bunch of people may sweet-talk you, but they are all actually a bunch of ruthless, disloyal wolves. You should figure things out as you go. Remember not to make friends with them. You're nothing but a set of glowing benefits in their eyes. Jasper smiled upon hearing John's genuine advice. Don't worry, I know what to do, he said. John nodded and let out an alcohol-infused breath. That's enough. I'm old now. I can't withstand that much anymore. I'm going to go now, he said. Watching John get into his car shakily, Jasper turned over. He caught sight of Wendy in the leisure bar of the hotel lobby. Overcome with boredom, she was using a fork to poke at the plate of pasta before her. Jasper walked toward Wendy and sat down in the seat opposite her. Why didn't you follow me just now? He asked. You were busy socializing with a bunch of men. I won't go, Wendy remarked with a hint of distaste. You must have waited for a long time, Jasper said apologetically. Shaking her head, Wendy replied in a dismal tone, those classmates of ours are really despicable. After you left, I couldn't stand it anymore, so I showed them your business license. I was rather happy to see their shocked expressions. However, I found it meaningless after that. Jasper chuckled. That's fine. You can just cut down on your interactions with them in the future. Don't let it ruin your mood, he said. You don't blame me, right? Wendy asked hesitantly. Why should I blame you? Jasper asked. For bringing you along to the reunion event. Also, I showed them your business license on my own accord. I understand that we shouldn't show others the money we have, but I can't stand how they were looking down on you. Jasper burst out into laughter. Don't show others the money we have? If I only had $1 million or $10 million, I would not dare to reveal it either. However, now that I'm so wealthy, I want the whole world to know that I am rich. Otherwise, how can I act high and mighty in front of everyone? You, Wendy glared at Jasper. How honest of you. Chapter 65. There's nothing I need to hide from you, Jasper chuckled. Wendy felt that Jasper was being beyond shameless with his words. However, thinking about it, it was the truth. If one owned a few $1 million, some people may come up with certain intentions and do something irrational. However, in the face of a wealthy man that had a net worth of $1 billion, who would dare to do anything to him? 1 week later, Jasper moved from the town to Thornton Park in the city. The house was already well renovated and designed, so Jasper could move in any time. However, Jasper had contacted the renovation team and asked them to carry out the renovation of 2 other villas within the same week. These 2 villas would be used as the temporary workspace of JW Capital. The computers, printers, and network office supplies had to be prepared and set up as well. The company only consisted of 3 employees, Jasper included, as of now. Meanwhile, he had handed the management of the company's finances to Wendy, as he did not trust anyone else for this except her. On this day, Jack Tanner came to the city as agreed. Jasper went to greet him personally. Jack had thoroughly made up his mind this time around. He had brought his wife and daughter along with him. This villa is our temporary office space. On the other hand, your family can stay in the villa next door. You can choose any room you want. Jasper said this as he handed the key of the villa over to Jack. Jack did not have much to say about that. He directly asked, "What is my job scope?" "You are the general manager of JW Capital. The company still hasn't taken on any professional tasks yet, but there'll be work soon. By then, the operation of the entire company will be entrusted to you." Jasper had formed a plan early on. If a management prodigy like Jack Tanner was not put to good use, it would literally be a waste of a gift bestowed by God. Jack followed Jasper into the villa. Looking at the empty space and new office equipment, he chuckled. "This feels like a startup company," he remarked. "We are a startup company." Jasper laughed. "The only thing that's different is we don't need to accumulate our raw capital. I have the money. We can just acquire other companies," he said. "Have you found an acquisition target, Mr. Lane?" Jack asked. Jasper laughed lightly. "Yes, and I've ordered 2 plane tickets to Cavern City for the both of us," he said. "Cavern City?" Jack frowned and thought about it for a while. He shook his head and said, "There are too many internet companies in Cavern City. May I know which company you have targeted, Mr. Lane?" "Terry's Own Incorporated," Jasper answered straight away. He clicked into a software program on the computer and said, "This instant messaging software currently has the largest number of users within the country, and the number of new users is increasing daily. As of now, It has more than 5 million users. This small icon will grow to become something that nobody could have ever imagined. Hearing Jasper evaluate Terry's Own so highly, Jack grew serious about it as well. I've heard of it before. Worsoft has its own instant messaging software as well. It's called MSN. You know about it, right, Mr. Lane? According to our internal evaluation, Terry's Own is Worsoft's biggest rival in the country. However, all internet products, Terry's Own included, have not found a way to make a profit. They are making a loss every day. Jasper chuckled. This will only be temporary. I want to let everyone know that it's possible to profit by selling internet products. We'll make a fortune. Jasper and Jack's flight would depart in the afternoon. After Jack familiarized himself with their surroundings and helped his family settle down, the both of them headed straight to the airport. Winnie did not follow along this time. She had to remain in the country to hire some clerks. Alas, it was impossible for only 3 people to work in such a large villa. Tasks like photocopying materials and picking up calls would have to be delegated to other people. Just as Jasper and Jack got onto the plane, Worsoft released news about Jack leaving the company on their official webpage. The domestic circle of professional managers was thrown into an uproar. It was not wise to overlook Jack Tanner's appeal and charisma in this era. As someone from an ethnic minority group, he was able to get a high-level executive position in Worsoft and even received numerous praises from the world's richest man, Mr. Gates. Jack was definitely the best in the country in terms of his work abilities and performance in the finance industry. Chapter 66. People would pay attention to every move and action of a person like that. It can even be said that as long as Jack Tanner was willing, countless of domestic companies would wave banknotes around just to hire him. However, Jack had left his position in Worsoft so unexpectedly to join a company that no one had even heard of. Suddenly, countless dominant forces and capital firms within the industry began to pay attention to a company named JW Capital. They were stupefied after looking it up. It was a newly registered company. The company had just obtained its business license not too long ago. The legal representative was someone named Jasper Lane. Who was he? Nobody knew him. They were all the more shocked after looking at the company's registered capital. $1 billion. How many people within the country could take out $1 billion just like that? Assets were assets. Cash was cash. These were two very different concepts. For example, Schuler Group, which was under Dawson Schuler, had a market value of $2 billion in terms of assets, but it almost went bankrupt because of the $600 million in their cash flow. This incident occurred when Schuler Group's main business was their supermarket chain, under the condition whereby their cash flow had been maximized. It was considered pretty good if the cash possessed by an ordinary company could account for 20% of the company's assets. However, this unknown, newly established company already had $1 billion in registered capital. Everyone initially thought they were a new paper company of one of the major companies and speculated about the company behind it. There were various diverging opinions. This was also the very first time the higher-up executives from the financial circle began taking notice of the names Jasper Lane and Wendy Schuler. Right then, Jasper and Jack arrived at the Cavern City International Airport. They took a ride to the hotel and put down their luggage. After that, Jasper dragged Jack into a taxi and headed over to the address that he had memorized beforehand. Half an hour later, they found Terry's Own Incorporated's current office venue in a remote and old alley within the city. This is it. Jack stared at the old residential building in front of them in shock. It was hard to believe that a company like Terry's Own with up to 5 million software users had such a shabby workspace. You have been working in a high-end company like Worsoft all this while. Of course you wouldn't know about the difficulties of being a domestic company that has started from nothing. These conditions are comparatively pretty good, Jasper said while shaking his head. He thought of another entrepreneur named Wayne Marlin. He was still working on his wholesale webpage with his team in a house located in one of the districts within Harvey City. The two of them walked up the dilapidated stairs. Of course, a building like that did not come with any form of soundproofing. Before reaching the door, Jasper heard a wail coming from within the house. The server is about to break down. No, I can't take it anymore. I want to buy a new server. How I wish as well. This was another voice. He, who doesn't wish for the same? But what about the money? This was the third voice. None of the three unkempt young men, who were all huddled together, noticed the two men standing by the door of their office. Li Jin smiled and looked at the young man before him. The three of them were part of the famous founding team of Terry's Own Inc. Hudson Moore and Daniel Carter, the key figures, were not there. Meanwhile, Zane Colton, Cameron Scott, and Logan Zimmerman were all there. Jasper's gaze shone. He looked like he had just caught sight of three golden egg-laying hens. Chapter 67. Who are you guys? Logan Zimmerman asked them curiously. He was the first to notice Jasper and Jack standing at the door. Is there anything we can help you with? Zane Colton and Cameron Scott asked them after noticing their presence as well. Although Terry's Own Incorporated had been established for more than a year and even had around 5 million software users right now, people hardly ever came to visit the company. We're here to collaborate with you, Jasper chuckled. However, before commencing this discussion, your server will break down if you don't handle it right now. It was exactly the same as he remembered. Terry's Own was terribly poor right now. The entire company sustained themselves on the software Hudson Moore had created years ago and the first set of earnings they obtained from the stock market until now. It was hard to make ends meet. And what more, the five of them did not even take any salaries. Meanwhile, the server was their biggest problem. This was different from the future, where there would be tons of server resources. During this era, a normal server cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. Other than wealthy state-owned enterprises, private enterprises could hardly afford one. The server currently used by Terry's Own was a substandard product that Zane had assembled after buying the individual components from the Northern District during a desperate point in time. This simply showed just how poor Terry's Own Incorporated was. Upon Jasper's reminder, Zane turned over to look at the server. It was on the verge of breaking down due to the huge data stream passing through it. Zane rushed forward with a yell. Other than Daniel Carter, who was in charge of the company's legal affairs, the five founders of Terry's Own Incorporated all had top-notch programming skills. Otherwise, Terry's Own would not have been able to support 5 million software users with a self-constructed, substandard server. The sound of the keyboard rang out in the small office. Zane stared at the screen, sweat beading on his forehead. The technical prodigy who had developed the main program of KK was not in a good mood. Logan, think of something. The server is now overloaded. It could break down at any moment. If it breaks down, we'll lose a lot of users. What can we do? Logan remarked. His fingers flew across the keyboard at the speed of light. The server's performance has reached its capacity. We can either add a server immediately or wait for this one to go down. If nothing else works, should we forcibly disconnect some of the users? That way, the data load could be alleviated, Cameron suggested. Zane and Logan remained silent after registering what he had said. Users were the very core of Terry's Own. Although disconnecting some of the users would reduce the load on the server, doing so would make it seem like they were going against their principles. Right then, Jack, who had been standing behind them all along while watching them hustle, whispered in Jasper's ear. Mr. Lane, this bunch of young people seems to have a pretty good attitude, but it's just that they're simply too poor, right? Jasper smiled and stated what Jack was too embarrassed to say. If they weren't poor, we wouldn't have the chance to work with them, Jasper said matter-of-factly. He took a step forward as he spoke. Look at it from a different perspective. The main load on the server is coming from data transmission between users within the country, he told Zane, who was now drenched in sweat. You can open up a buffer area in the server memory to store the current messages being sent out by users and send them out after a 1-second delay. That way, the users would hardly feel the delay, but the server will get 1-second window to cool down. After this, it will have more computing power. Jasper's suggestion introduced a new perspective to the three of them. After thinking about it for a while, Zane was certain that this was an effective tactic. Cameron, Logan, hurry up and do as he says. Write up the code for the buffer area. I will support the data stream here. Do it at once. Chapter 68. Jack looked at Jasper in astonishment. Although he did not know anything about programming, he could tell that Jasper's idea was indeed feasible from the expressions on the others' faces. Not only was his new boss a total prodigy in terms of earning money, but he also knew how to do programming. He was still so young. He could not have learned all this in his mother's womb, right? 10 minutes later, Logan and Cameron wiped the sweat from their faces as they looked at the server, which had gradually stabilized down. They breathed out in relief. We've finally overcome this stage. It can hold on for at least one more week. More accurately, it would be able to support the users for 4 to 5 more days. You must consider the rate of increase in users, Jasper corrected them with a grin. Right then, Zane stood up and gazed at Jasper intently. It was almost as if he had just discovered a new piece of land. I'm Zane Colton. Your suggestion was really effective. Thank you for your help. Jasper chuckled. Actually, he did not know anything about programming. Zane was the one who had thought of this idea in his past life. He merely plagiarized his ideas in front of the mastermind himself. Jasper would never turn down the excellent opportunity to show off in front of a skilled programmer like him. I'm Jasper Lane. This is Jack Tanner. As I said just now, we're here to propose a collaboration with Terry's Own Incorporated, Jasper said while shaking hands with each of them. Jack Tanner? Jack Tanner from Worsoft. A shocked voice rang out from the side of the door. They all turned to look at the door at once. Jasper instantly caught sight of a young, seemingly well-educated man. He was holding 2 bags of takeaway while standing by the door. He was the key figure of Terry's Own Incorporated. He was the future chairman of a board of directors with a market value of up to trillions of dollars and a global leader of the internet, Hudson Moore. Unlike Zane and the others, who were fully immersed in programming and were hardly ever concerned about global news, Hudson always paid attention to the changes going on in the outside world. Today's greatest news was inarguably the fact that the nation's #1 professional manager, Jack Tanner, had quit Worsoft and joined a different company. Hudson would never have expected this renowned figure to appear in his small company today. Hudson felt like he was in a trance as he looked at Jack. Jack laughed. He said, I've already left Worsoft. I'm now the general manager of JW Capital. Mr. Lane is my boss. This sentence alone made all of them shift their attention from him to Jasper. Jack, who was well-versed regarding workplace rules, understood that one should never steal the limelight from his or her boss, no matter the circumstances or occasion. Although he felt that Jasper would not care about superficial mannerisms like that. Putting down the takeaway bags, Hudson looked at Jasper curiously. You're the boss of JW Capital? But you look really young, he said. You're not that much older than me either, Mr. Moore. Didn't you establish Terry's Own as well? Jasper asked with a hint of a smile. Hudson waved his hands at once. He had yet to be the most powerful businessman in the world. Right now, he was only a founder of a startup company who was sick of being poor. Terry's Own cannot even begin to compare to JW Capital. I saw the news of Mr. Tanner joining JW Capital today, so I looked up the company due to curiosity. It has a registered capital of $1 billion. After Hudson finished speaking, the other founders of Terry's Own, who were still shocked by Jack's identity, felt a buzz fill their minds. They looked at Jasper with looks of disbelief. Other than Jack, everyone here was below 30 in age. Jasper was the youngest among them. However, he already owned a company that was worth $1 billion. Zane and the others felt that the world must have gone mad. Chapter 69. How much is $1 billion? Logan asked Zane in a hushed voice. Shaking his head, Zane replied honestly, I've never seen that much money either. I'm guessing the money should be able to fill up this house, and the toilet as well. Oh. Cameron took a sharp breath. This was simply unbelievable. The 5 founders of Terry's Own Incorporated did not come from poor family backgrounds. In this era, their families could be regarded as wealthy families with a decent amount of money. Otherwise, it would be impossible for them to get together just for a so-called dream and endure a few months without having a salary in order to establish Terry's Own. However, everything paled in comparison to $1 billion. After getting to know each other, they told Hudson about how Jasper had come up with an idea that helped reduce the load of the server effectively. Hudson suddenly began to look at Jasper differently. Jasper pointed at the box of takeaway in Hudson's hand. Jack and I came over in a hurry. We haven't had lunch yet. Do you mind if we eat with you guys? He asked with a grin. Of course, we wouldn't mind, Hudson said. It's just that the food may be a little too meager for your liking, he added. I'm from the countryside myself. Back then, Even a box of takeaway was a luxury for me, Jasper said while opening the boxes of takeaways. He handed each of them a box. Originally, there was no share of food for the both of them. However, there were many people in the company who were all young men. Therefore, Hudson had bought a few extra boxes of takeaway. Now, it was just enough for all of them. Nobody felt that Jasper was being bossy and domineering despite the glorification of his identity. On the contrary, they all felt that Jasper was humble, approachable, and easy to get along with. Since they were all young men, conversation flowed easily among them. When Hudson heard that Jasper was from the countryside, he asked him how he earned so much money out of curiosity. After knowing that Jasper earned his money from the stock market, Hudson's eyes shone. Not many people knew that Hudson had earned his first sum of money from the stock market. He had earned $700,000 with a principal of $100,000. Otherwise, he would not have had the money to start up Terry's Own. Hudson could hardly imagine how Jasper earned $1 billion. He had felt pretty good about himself when he earned $700,000. Just how scarily accurate was his investment vision? He still did not know about all of Jasper's assets. Otherwise, he would have received an even greater shock. Even so, the founders of Terry's Own felt that the takeaway food in their hands had lost its appeal after listening to Jasper telling them about his journey to wealth. Comparing oneself to others would only bring rage and anguish. After having his meal, Hudson finally asked Jasper what everyone was curious about. "Mr. Lane, you said that you want to work with us. May I know which aspect you're referring to?" Zane and the others turned to look at each other. They then looked at Jasper curiously. Although Terry's Own had 5 million users right now and was ranked first in the country in terms of instant messaging software, they knew their place. Their company was nothing in comparison to Jasper's JW Capital. Jasper did not keep them in suspense. He told them directly, "I look highly upon Terry's Own as I've been using your products all along. In my opinion, Terry's Own's KK is the best instant messaging software in the country." After hearing what he said, Zane and the others were overcome with joy. After all, KK was their brainchild. They had watched it slowly grow up just like their own child. Receiving praise from a billionaire like Jasper Lane naturally made them feel a sense of accomplishment. However, Hudson read into the situation more deeply. He stared at Jasper with a scorching gaze and asked, "Mr. Lane, do you intend to make an investment?" What did Terry's Own need the most right now? Money. Chapter 70. Not to mention the price of a server. They had not even been able to afford to pay their own salaries for the past few months. If they did not earn anything in the short term, Terry's Own could only go bankrupt. Terry's Own was currently going through its toughest time. Plenty of investors had approached them due to KK, which had the largest number of users in the country. However, they were either greedy in terms of their demands or pessimistic toward Terry's Own's future development. In short, they just could not agree on anything. Hudson was eager to obtain an investment. He had even thought of selling KK. His ideal sum was $1 million, but the only boss who was interested only offered up to a maximum of $800,000. A disagreement thus occurred due to the difference of $200,000. This would become a major joke in the future. That boss missed out on the opportunity to invest in a $1 trillion company just because he could not bear to pay an extra $200,000. "Yes, I intend to invest $10 million. Jasper threw out a shocking statement in a calm tone. Huff! Cough! Logan choked on a mouthful of food and instantly spat it out. His spit landed on Cameron, who was seated opposite of him. However, Cameron did not bother to go after Logan for spitting on him as well. His eyes widened. "How much did you say? $10 million? He asked in utter disbelief. It felt as if Jasper had just pulled out a royal flush in front of them, while all they had were pairs of threes. TN. Royal flush and pairs of threes refer to cards dealt in a game of poker. A royal flush is the highest hand in poker. Unlike Zane and the others, Hudson did not show such an exaggerated response toward Jasper's proposal. Instead of excitement, worry overcame him when he heard about the sum of money Jasper would like to invest. Based on Terry's Own's current net worth, $10 million was enough to buy 2 to 3 companies of the same net worth. The fact that Jasper was willing to offer such a large sum of investment meant that he really looked highly upon Terry's Own. On the other hand, this meant that Hudson's ownership and rights to Terry's own would likely be relinquished. This went against Hudson Moore's basic principles. When a company received an injection of capital from an outside party, the founders would not be able to develop the company according to their own ideas. Would this brainchild of theirs still belong to them? Jasper could tell what Hudson was worrying about instantly. He continued to speak. Yes, $10 million. It will be a cash injection, but not a full-scale acquisition. I want 51% of the company's shares. You guys can have the remaining 49% and distribute it amongst yourselves however you want to. In other words, I don't care how you divide the shares among yourselves, but I cannot have less than 51% of the company's shares. Huden let out a dry laugh. 51% of the shares exceed the proportion of shares owned by a majority shareholder. How is this any different from a full-scale acquisition? It is different from a full-scale acquisition because I'm only going to formulate the major strategic policies, such as coming up with ways to increase Terrazone's profitability, whereas you guys will have the final say on the specifics in company management and operation. I will not intervene. Jasper put down his spoon. Although he had a calm expression on his face, his stance was domineering and overbearing. Amazed by Jasper's strong demeanor, Hudson furrowed his brows without saying anything. Zane, what do you guys think? Hudson asked while turning to look at Zane and the others. Zane and the others were beyond excited. What else do we need to say about this? Of course, we'll agree to it wholeheartedly, Cameron said excitedly. Mr. Lane has already said that he won't intervene in the management of the company. He'll also help us achieve profitability. Isn't this exactly what we dreamt of? Jasper chuckled. Exactly. Don't think that the shares you own are little. Think about this instead. With a capital injection of $10 million, the 49% of shares you guys own will be worth up to $5 million. Even if you resell the shares, you'll earn a huge profit. Besides that, Jasper paused momentarily. He then stood up and continued speaking with a confidence that bordered on arrogance. In the future, Terry's Own will become an invincible company with a market value of up to trillions of dollars. You'll have the largest user base in the world, and you'll earn up to millions of profits every second. You guys will change the way humans communicate,